In the heart of the world, amidst a vast expanse of white wasteland, a monster dwells. A white python that swallows glaciers whole, a grizzly bear that causes the earth to tremble, and a loathsome rat that fouls the oceans. But an emperor who survived the return from the white wasteland once said, "The most dangerous things in that place are the monsters." Back then in the white wasteland, tremors erupted incessantly. A barefoot girl took down a beast in the middle of a blizzard. Not far away, a massive explosion occurred. The sturdy hand of a man tightened around the monster's claw. He let out a piercing, aggressive roar as if to assert his own strength. Right at this moment, someone else slowly approached. The moment it saw him, the monster trembled in sheer terror. He gripped a sharp weapon firmly, and with agile, decisive strikes, he sent the monster straight to the afterlife free of charge. Afterward, this person stood alongside the two from before. Only the barbarian tribe would dare to flaunt their ignorance like that. He walked over to the bewildered girl and asked, "How much longer must I hang around these rude, ignorant fools?" She looked at him with wide, innocent eyes like a 3-year-old child. "What is ignorant? Is it edible?" Hearing this, he sighed helplessly and walked away. And so the bald young man and the naive girl sat back, enjoying the monster's meat in peace. Just then, Kental, like a devil, stepped toward the pair. "I told you clearly not to eat that because it would kill you." A fierce killing aura rose from his entire body. "Not even a week has passed and you've already eaten it all." The girl sitting below felt flustered, unable to speak. The idea was, then the two of them proceeded to put on a performance that could not have been more fake. It was a highly noble challenge. "And you call that something to be proud of?" As soon as he finished speaking, Greta's pupils constricted. His face turned pale as if he were constipated. He was in agony, his body shaking, and white foam bubbled at his mouth. Then Greta collapsed amidst the girl's panic. "Greta, what's wrong? Wake up." On the side, Kental just let out a breath. "I already told you, but you guys wouldn't listen." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the girl to repeatedly punch Greta in the face. "Wake up, Greta. Come on, get up." Kental still had his back turned, standing in the middle of the blizzard, and softly muttered, "This isn't what I wanted." Starting the main character's inner monologue. "In a world full of magic and fantasy, I quit my job and set off on an adventure. I climbed the tallest mountain on Earth, reached the very center of the planet, and even arrived at the southernmost point of the globe. But of course, nothing happened. Reality was the furthest thing from imagination. Every night I prayed that when I woke up, I would be in the middle of a dream, and then one day that prayer came true." Scene shift to a place not far away. A carriage and a group of people were moving through a blizzard. Damn it, it's bone-chilling. A man with blonde hair looked at the person next to him. "Then wrap yourself up tight unless you want to freeze to death." The young man covered his face with his hands and replied with difficulty, I'm already wrapped up, sir." Beside him, someone else hurriedly said, "Captain, no matter how great the reward is, this is still really stupid. Crossing the white wasteland, did you actually make it here?" But the only response was the captain's resolute expression. "Be quiet, didn't everyone already agree to this?" He avoided eye contact, thinking to himself, "We didn't know it would be like this." Inside the carriage, the old butler heard those words and clicked his tongue in annoyance. "Damn it, it's too cold." He raised his hand and coughed softly, then timidly looked at the person in front of him. "My lady, are you all right?" The girl with blue hair smiled brightly like a flower. Yes. She was Milna of the Akasa clan. She happily answered the butler, "I'm fine." Outside, there were still complaints. "Damn it, I'm going to freeze to death out here." Unable to hold it in anymore, the butler looked furious and glared outside, shouting, "How incredibly rude." Even so, Milna remained very empathetic. "Don't be so harsh, they are the only ones willing to escort us across the white wasteland." Her expression flickered with a hint of worry. "Even so, shouldn't we let them inside? They look like they're about to freeze." Outside, the blizzard grew stronger. Everyone struggled to cover their faces with their hands. Suddenly, the butler looked at her, flustered. "No, you know what dwells in the white wasteland." Hearing this, Milna lowered her head. "The monster's right. A long time ago, an emperor with the ambition to rule the whole world set his sights on conquering the white wasteland. He led countless warriors and soldiers, and he himself entered the white wasteland. Many years later, when the empire had collapsed and fallen into oblivion, that emperor returned, having lost all his soldiers, a broken shadow of his former self. He had aged by decades, talking like a madman. He claimed there were monsters in the white wasteland, but the most dangerous things were not the monsters, but the barbarians. They had been there. A familiar silhouette appeared, perhaps it was Kental. The old butler continued to speculate. It must just be a legend. Mylna immediately refuted. But the Emperor's words were not groundless. Many of the monsters he described were later confirmed to be real. The butler smiled to reassure her, but no one has ever seen a barbarian. Then she accepted that. That's true, countless stories have been passed down, but none of them mention the barbarians. Outside the carriage, the captain suddenly raised his voice. Everyone stopped. He gritted his teeth and looked ahead. There's something up ahead. What is it? The captain tried to squint to see the thing approaching clearly. Finally, because the fog was too thick, he blurted out, I can't see clearly. A second later, his face turned horrified. I have some good news and some bad news. Everyone in the team immediately urged him. Spit it out. The captain froze. Damn it, the good news is that the thing is quite small, and the bad news is... Kentel's silhouette gradually became clear under the falling snow. It was heading toward us. Hearing that, everyone shared the same expression. The old butler widened his eyes and looked outside. The captain immediately went on high alert, gripping the hilt of the sword at his waist. His expression filled with constant fear. That shape gradually became clearer. A human gray-white hair exposed, along with six-pack abs and large scars. Kentel strode proudly toward the group, his eyes flashing with a purple light. A team member raised his axe high, immediately recognizing him as a barbarian. Kentel's gaze was sharp as a blade, slowly glancing over everyone there. Then he took the initiative to speak. I went out for a walk because I was sick of looking at other barbarians, yet I ran into a bunch of outsiders in the snow. What luck. His mouth involuntarily curled up, revealing an enigmatic smile. Kentel showed an excited expression. I didn't expect to meet anyone here, a pleasure to meet you. Afterward, he glanced at the carriage. Are you a merchant? They immediately confirmed. Yeah. Kentel continued to question, and you are mercenaries hired as escorts, right? The captain answered truthfully, that's right. Suddenly, Kentel rubbed his chin and blurted out, I advise you all to turn back, though I guess you will. Come here. The captain's expression already showed a hint of terror. Suddenly, Kentel realized something. There is someone in the carriage, right? Inside, Mylna immediately startled. The captain's whole body trembled uncontrollably, waiting for his next words. Yet Kentel smiled and said something no one expected. I want to be hired too. The whole group immediately went on high alert. What? But Kentel remained very confident, hands on his hips. Was I not clear enough? I'm offering to help you cross this wasteland. Hearing that, the captain thought to himself, a legendary barbarian asking to come along, could that really be all he wants? Then he cautiously replied, so you don't have hostile intentions. Kentel coldly folded his arms across his chest. If I did, you'd all be dead already. As soon as the words left his lips, everyone's eyes went blank as if they had just been awakened. A young man in the group turned to look at the captain, and then he slowly raised his hand. Can you hear it, my lady? Mylna remained silent inside, not responding. Then she immediately turned to face outside. The old butler was confused, wondering what was happening. The captain continued to report to her. He said he wants to be hired as a mercenary. What do you want to do? Once again, Mylna fell into deep thought and posed a question. What if we fight him? The captain looked at the intense killing aura radiating from Kentel and replied hesitantly. Personally, I wouldn't recommend that. Hearing that, she bowed her head, momentarily speechless. Afterward, Mylna looked out the window and ordered them. Understood, tell him we accept. Receiving the instructions, the captain nodded. All right. And so Kentel's request was approved. She agreed. Hearing this, Kentel broke into a satisfied smile. Although he appeared very happy, his appearance terrified the others. Seeing this, the two people immediately felt their legs go weak on the spot. Kentel stepped closer to the captain, who asked in surprise, what? Kentel grinned, reassuring him, calm down, you're just a hireling, I need to meet the person in charge directly. Immediately, a warning flash appeared in the captain's eyes. If you dare to pull anything. Not letting him finish the sentence, Kentel interrupted, you'll regret it. The captain had no choice but to let him walk toward the carriage. Seeing this, the young man in the group looked at him in bewilderment. Captain, is it really okay to let him meet her? The client has already allowed it. The boy next to him was also wary. Even so, we are mercenaries, shouldn't we stop him somehow? The captain replied, stop him. Kentel's menacing silhouette was still in his sight. Are you serious? Don't be stupid. Inside, the old butler was extremely panicked. My lady, what are you doing? Mylna just softly reassured, calm down. Suddenly, a voice spoke up, startling her. May I come in? The old butler beside her was even more panicked than she was, to the point of dropping his glasses. Mylna also hesitantly agreed. "Yes, come in." Receiving the answer, Kental smiled thinly, looking like a predatory demon. The butler cowered, and he looked exactly like he was expanding his territory. Kental closed his eyes, his expression calm and indifferent, advising, "Please stay calm, both of you. I have no desire to cause you any harm." His large frame, sitting in the carriage with the butler, nearly crushed the poor man. The butler turned pale, screaming in his heart, "Don't come any closer, you monster." Mylna, sitting opposite, looked up in a daze, overwhelmed by his figure. The legendary barbarian was standing right in front of her. She shyly spoke up, "It is a pleasure to meet you." Kental also politely replied, "It's a pleasure to meet you too." As he looked out at the snowy scenery through the window, he gently sighed. "It's quite warm in here, isn't it? Even in the middle of such a vast field of snow to still maintain such warmth." Mylna was a bit surprised but still explained, "Ah, that is thanks to magic." He happily replied, "Oh, is it really magic? You know, the world out there." A series of rambling sentences left her bewildered. Kental looked outside again, saying, "As you both know, this place is extremely dangerous. Even with mercenaries escorting you, the chance of you two crossing safely is very slim. Therefore, I will ensure your safety. However, I have a request." The sudden words made Mylna and the butler freeze stiff. Mylna hesitated. "A request? What do you want?" Kental grinned knowledge from outside the ice plains. He smiled faintly, speaking frankly, "The information you hold is exactly what I want." She heard that and was confused. Knowledge outside the frozen plains. Kental nodded firmly, "Yes." He even tried to persuade her, "You two lose nothing." Mylna pursed her lips in hesitation, her heart filled with worry. From the very beginning, we didn't have the right to choose. With no other path, Mylna finally agreed, "I understand." The butler next to her saw this, immediately opening his mouth in shock, frozen like stone. Kental smiled pleasantly, "Very well then, what is your name?" Mylna placed a hand over her chest, solemnly answering, "I am Mylna, Mylna of the Akasa clan." He was amused and also generously introduced himself. "I am Kental, it is a pleasure to work with you. In my previous life, I longed for a fantasy world. Right on my own desk were open-world game discs and 2 PlayStation controllers. One day I woke up, only to find myself transformed into a barbarian in the icy plains." That silhouette was slightly unsteady, looking at his hands in disbelief, with no time to find the reason why. "The only things that existed here were a rusted axe and countless powerful monsters. I led a tribe through the wilderness, hunting for survival, gritting my teeth and enduring each day. I don't know how long time had passed, nor how many years had gone by. I never stopped trying to escape this horrific frozen wasteland. But every time his hand slammed against the barrier, countless system windows would pile up and display, 'Quest incomplete. You can leave the frozen wasteland when you complete the quest.' An invisible force prevented me from leaving this place. Just when I was about to give up, a cavalry silhouette suddenly appeared in the middle of a snowstorm. I couldn't understand why anyone would voluntarily set foot in such a harsh place. Occasionally, people from the outside world would appear, and I realized Kental was slightly dazed. The world outside the harsh frozen wasteland was the fantasy world of magic I had always dreamed of. Clear blue skies, warm eyes, endless lush green meadows, villages or towns springing up with beautiful ancient architecture. That was exactly the fantasy world. From then on, I really acted not just for survival anymore. He slaughtered monsters, quest 295, kill the lizards within the allotted time. I slaughtered monsters, solved the assigned quests to escape the frozen wasteland. A fatal blow, blood splattered everywhere. Quest 295 completed, the next quest will be provided with the belief that one day I will escape this place. He thought, because I couldn't leave this damn field of snow, the information obtained from those coming from the outside was extremely precious. Yet Kental remembered, most people I had met so far either panicked and drew their swords or were half-mad. He folded his arms calmly, this time finally having someone willing to talk to me. How long has it been since I chatted with a civilized person? I only ever deal with uneducated barbarians, so getting to talk to a civilized person feels like a sedative. Suddenly, he spoke up in a relaxed tone. "You too are transporting weapons, aren't you?" Mylna was startled and replied, Yes, that's right, how did you know?" He glanced outside and answered, "I heard the sound of steel inside the wagons, it's hard not to notice." She felt a bit flustered. "I see, I understand." Kental asked again, "Is there a war going on outside?" Mylna looked quite somber and softly replied, "Ah yes, the Empire and the Kingdom are at war. he clarified. I see, so the outside world isn't entirely peaceful either. She immediately countered, it's not like that. Mylna imagined the two powers separated by nothing but a tiny heap of ruins. She explained, the Empire is overwhelming in terms of numbers and force, but the kingdom isn't easily defeated. Sword masters and heroes are protecting the borders. Kental asked curiously, heroes, sword masters, what kind of power do they wield? Mylna tilted her head slightly, confused. Wait, have you never heard of mana arts? Kental answered honestly, I've never left this place. She pondered, I don't know the details, but a power called mana arts exists in this world. Only a few people can feel or wield that power. Like spiritual energy or mana, it gathers in the Danshan, and they are granted one of 5 power ranks. First is Grade 3, where magic can be gently summoned, appearing in the palm of one's hand. This is only for those who can perceive mana arts. Next is Grade 2, an application that involves using both magic and swordsmanship. From Grade 2 and up, one is considered a user of mana arts. After that is Grade 1, they have the ability to convert mana energy into aura or magic power, but these individuals are usually mages, knights, or spirits. Surpassing this level, all classifications become meaningless because those are entities beyond human comprehension. If forced to name it, we call it the transcendental level. These are beings who can freely manipulate mana, powerful enough to shake the heavens and earth. Sword masters belong to this group. And finally, there is the hero tier. They are monsters far beyond the control of mere mana arts, with the power to influence the entire world. Each hero is a living legend in their own right. Mylna was thoughtful and analyzed. The fact that their power is named and ranked is proof of that strength. Even a Grade 3 user is already considered a master in a small region. Kental expressed a wish. I look forward to meeting them. She stopped, suspicious. Kental didn't answer, keeping his posture, looking at the distant sky. He thought to himself, I don't remember how long I've been stuck here. I'm just trying to survive in despair. All I know is the ice wasteland in the middle of this fantasy world from which I cannot escape. He stood on a sharp cliff, facing the wind, the snowscape belonging only to this place. Outside there is the fantasy world. Kental bowed his head, truly longing to leave this place. Suddenly his lips curled into a smile. Kental countered himself, but his face remained determined, certain in his heart that he must get out. Time slipped away, snow piled up on the roof of the wagon, and they kept moving forward. Mylna suddenly asked, Kental, you really are a savage, aren't you? Kental was calm. You could say that. Looking at your expression, it seems you've heard of me. She admitted, yes, it's a legend. Hearing that word left him bewildered. Kental was surprised. A legend about me. Now it was her turn to be stunned. Wait, you do know. Mylna told him everything. A moment later, Kental laughed heartily, remembering, and said offhandedly, so that's it, the old emperor, that guy is an emperor, I thought he was just a madman. She fell backward. Yes. Kental was relaxed. Well, don't worry about it, that legend is true, but that happened a long time ago. Mylna stammered, is that so? He pondered for a moment, then became curious. All right then. Judging by the caravan, you're carrying a large amount of weapons, right? Why do you have to cross this ice wasteland? She was stunned, her lips trembling. We need a lot of money. Mylna looked downcast, bowing her head. He was surprised by that reason. Mylna said sadly, our family has been in business for generations and had accumulated quite a bit of wealth, but we were sabotaged by jealous rivals and now we are drowning in debt. This trip is meant to save our family from collapse. Kental stroked his chin, speculating, a journey to solve debt problems, so that's it. He continued, so you intend to sell weapons to the kingdom that is at war with the Empire, I understand. She was surprised. Yes. He laid it out calmly. You already said the Empire is overwhelming in numbers, which means the Empire isn't lacking in weapons. If it's not the Empire, then the kingdom is the side in need. When supply is scarce and demand is high, prices naturally skyrocket. I'm not sure about the prices out there, but with that quantity, it's certainly huge, enough for you to risk your lives crossing the ice wasteland. Mylna was dazed. Kental continued, it seems you had to arduously cross this place. Is there no other way to reach the kingdom? Is your territory adjacent to the Empire? She was shocked, her eyes widening as she confirmed. Mylna's mind went dark, unable to believe it. No way, I heard rumors that the legendary savage was just an ignorant brute. she asked in a strained voice, wary. Who are you? Are you really a savage? Suddenly, a massive tremor made Milna jump, quickly snapping her to attention. The wagon wheels wobbled and the butler stammered in terror. What was that? Then a piercing scream echoed from outside. He was terrified, cowering, panicked to the point of turning pale. Conversely, Kental calmly glanced outside, his tone indifferent. We have some uninvited guests. Outside, snow was falling softly, and amidst the hazy smog, a monster resembling a blob of living slime came to life, its eyes glowing red with a bloodthirsty glint. The mercenaries escorting the convoy were stunned. What is this? Milna was also terrified, her face ashen. When a sudden voice spoke up, is that a black slime? Kental rested his chin on his hand, pondering, HMPH, would it even be called that? She trembled, confirming, yes, that's it, it's recorded in the archives. He was curious, what are archives? Milna explained, many talented adventurers have tried to cross this land over the years. Only a few lucky ones survived to return, but those who were unlucky left notes about the creatures they encountered. Among them, the black slime appears the most. She asked seriously, Kent, do you know anything about it? He answered happily, of course the meat is chewy, it's not bad to snack on. The taste is actually quite good. Milna was terrified, stammering, wait, you've actually eaten it. Kental shared sincerely, wanna try? I'll go catch a few. She felt a chill, her whole body goose-pimpled, and coldly refused, no, thank you. Boom, a shocking sound erupted and Milna was startled. Out there, the hideous black slime was screaming. The captain froze, unable to stay calm. She also quickly realized the abnormality and called out in panic, Kental. Kent still just silently observed outside, not answering. Milna called out again, dazed, Kental. He spoke slowly, I have signed a covenant with you people. Kent closed his eyes, calmly continuing, I swore to protect your lives, so I will not take action unless it is truly dangerous. She was surprised, eyes wide. What do you mean? His voice was leisurely. That thing? I could handle it as easily as eating cake. Kental rested his chin on his hand, smiling, continuing to play the role of a dedicated spectator. More importantly, I want to evaluate the capabilities of this team myself. The chaotic screeching of the black slime finally snapped the crowd back to reality. The captain hurriedly issued orders, raise the shields. The subordinate immediately followed, yes sir. Just as they managed to raise their shields, the slime rammed straight into him. His feet were pushed back through the snow, struggling, but not long after, he was knocked backward, flying away. Another man, seeing this, leaped high, swinging the axe in his hand, shouting to build up momentum. Bang, a thunderous explosion echoed. He was sent flying, crashing into something, coughing up blood from the impact. The axe also fell onto the snow, emitting a lingering purple smoke, and a cry of horror rang out. What the hell is this? The black slime became even more frenzied, rearing up, opening its mouth to roar. The captain furrowed his brows and ordered, black slimes can only move in straight lines, spread out and regroup. A few mercenary subordinates quickly responded, understood. All right. In the blink of an eye, a man in a green cloak charged straight toward the black slime. He jumped up, drawing his spear back, then descended, swinging it with all his might in a direct sweep across the face of the black slime. It roared in anger, slime splattering everywhere. Suddenly, green light spots gathered on a person's hand, soaking into the spear. That person surged forward with force, tearing through the wind and snow, instantly piercing through this massive black slime before the stunned eyes of his teammate. It shrieked in pain, its slimy body gaping with a huge hole, trying to reconnect itself. At this moment, the captain channeled mana arts into his sword, charging forward while ordering, don't stop, keep attacking. He made a sweeping pass, his blue sword intent beautiful and sharp. He said quickly and tensely, normal attacks are useless, aim for the magic core, it's hidden inside its body. Time passed with dozens of slashes and stabs, almost continuous. Finally, the captain held his sword high, then struck down with force, mana energy radiating, and the red magic core cracked into pieces. A weak, lingering cry sounded, and the slime-like substance quickly melted and vanished, leaving the shattered magic core on the white snow. The whole team breathed a sigh of relief, and then immediately became excited. All right, we did it. Milna was also overjoyed. Everyone was happy because they had actually defeated it. Kental silently observed. Back on the road, not long after, they encountered a giant snow wolf. Wait, there's another monster. They focused their aim at its neck. Someone slashing, someone stabbing, someone defending. Every position was accounted for. Finally, through the combined efforts of the group, the monster's hot blood sprayed out, its life essence severed. A heavy thud echoed as it collapsed. Everyone surrounded it, still terrified. So this is the ice wasteland snow wolf? Not impressive at all, Captain. Perhaps the rumors were exaggerated. The captain turned back angrily, reminding them in a stern voice, "Don't let your guard down, we haven't even traveled half the distance yet." Another guy was dissatisfied, glancing toward the front of the wagon, and spoke out. "But is that savage really as strong as the rumors say? I mean, isn't he just a character from a legend?" They looked at Kentel, whispering their assessment. "He's considered the ruler of the food chain in the ice wasteland, yet he follows us to be protected. Shouldn't we test his strength?" The captain heard this and furrowed his brows, slightly wavering. Then, as if making up his mind, they stepped forward. Mylna noticed the suspicion and watched in silence. Standing in the wind and snow, the instigator stepped up to speak. "Miss, I have something to discuss with you." She was curious. "Huh, confirm what?" The guy answered firmly, "We have bet our lives to carry out this mission. As mercenaries, we have signed a contract with you, that is our job." Mylna stood opposite them, saying honestly, "Yes, and I truly appreciate that you accepted this request. I always treasure your help," she thought to herself. An escort mission through the ice wasteland. Others ran away as soon as they heard the mission details. "If not for you, I probably wouldn't have been able to start this journey." The guy suddenly spoke up. "However, there is something that worries us." Mylna was startled. He asked seriously, "That savage has never fought, right?" She hesitated. But before she could answer, he spoke solemnly. "Therefore, we want to test whether that savage deserves the special treatment he is receiving." Mylna heard this and hesitated slightly. She avoided eye contact and asked softly, "How do you intend to test him?" She looked at the captain with difficulty. The captain was helpless, replying, "I tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen to me." Kentel understood clearly, smiled, and spoke up. "So you want to test my strength? Very well." He stepped down comfortably and continued, "But now is not the time." They looked at each other, bewildered. Kent looked up coldly and replied, "There are already uninvited guests ahead." The group found this even harder to understand. One guy frowned. "What nonsense are you spouting?" Suddenly, a deep, gloomy voice echoed behind the mercenary squad, the tone dark and filled with hysterical intent to kill. "Ah, the weak mortals from outside the continent have arrived. It's been a long time since I've enjoyed a soul feast." The group was terrified and hurriedly turned their heads. In front of them, a massive serpent was opening its mouth, revealing long, sharp teeth. It had gained sentience and rasped, "Hand over your lives, you pathetic mortals." The white serpent scoffed and raised its voice, "Keep struggling, that will only make my meal taste even better." Mylna screamed and covered her ears. The guy next to her was just as terrified as she was. Suddenly, a voice rang out, "Halt." Kentel was serious, his voice firm, "You two are my clients, stay back." The white serpent heard this and appeared before him. Why are you here? Have you forgotten the rules of the ice wasteland, having left your tribe's territory?" Kentel showed obvious annoyance, rudely interrupting, "That has nothing to do with you." The white serpent replied, "How ridiculous." The battle continued to unfold intensely. The white serpent began to shout, "How dare you order me, I who have been granted eternity?" Kentel began to gather momentum for a punch. "Want to taste my moon strike?" The punch flew straight at the white serpent, making it fight back in extreme terror. Tornadoes from the battle rose up, frightening everyone. The guy gritted his teeth, struggling to endure, the shockwave growing larger by the second. Mylna had to use her hands to shield herself. "Miss." The white serpent grew more and more aggressive. It really was the type that only behaved after getting a whipping. She sat down, suddenly hesitating. "Kent." His cold, sharp gaze flared up. "I'll resolve this quickly." His powerful footsteps were ready. Kentel charged rapidly toward the white serpent. Gradually, his fist emerged, the light of the battle, surprising everyone around. Afterward, Kentel returned and said, "I have committed a grave offense. Please be generous and overlook it." In front of many witnesses, Kentel replied, "It's fine, it's not easy to trust a stranger anyway." Outside, the carriage caravan continued through the snow. The freezing weather and falling snow causing the butler to cough heavily, which drew Kent's attention. He met with Mylna and couldn't help but ask, "Now that I think about it, I have a question." She looked at him. "What is it?" He folded his arms, looking tensely at her attire and tone. "It seems you are not an ordinary person within your clan. Why would you personally join such a dangerous journey?" She answered wittily, "I am the eldest daughter of Velika, a concubine of Mr. Kasak Akasa." Hearing this, Kentel asked, "A concubine, so you are the child of a secondary wife?" She replied, "Yes." Afterward, Mylna told him about her past. Her mother had come here for a political marriage but was later abandoned, a pitiable mother without any real power. Kental understood that situation. I see. Mylna clenched her hands tightly and continued. My mother and I only carry the clan's name, but in reality we are nothing, treated like servants. She shyly lowered her head. I didn't intend to say this much. Not long after, Mylna said clearly, I volunteered for this expedition. Kent folded his arms across his chest, facing Mylna. Really, even though this journey is full of risks. She spoke, not daring to look him in the eye, stammering, but someone has to lead by example. Kental smiled faintly. I understand you're quite sharp. Mylna was surprised, losing her confidence again, listening silently as he spoke. But she also harbored great ambitions. She was truly ambitious. She broke into a sweat, hesitating. Kent and Mylna both looked out the window. We're here, aren't we? The captain of the mercenary group was amazed at the beautiful scenery of this place. The butler bowed, politely thanking Kental. Thank you very much, Kental. Kent asked Mylna, how do you intend to return? She replied, we will pass through the empire. He retorted sarcastically, since you've sold your weapons and no longer carry contraband, crossing the border won't be too difficult. Kental stared at her. Suddenly Mylna added, you said I was sharp and ambitious, what does that mean? The butler and Mylna glanced at him. Just as he said, she was both intelligent and ambitious. Kental raised his hands forward, analyzing. Your clan was once highly respected, but now it has fallen into crisis due to bankruptcy. Even though you are a concubine's child, if you personally open a path to save the clan on the verge of collapse, who do you think the subordinates will trust and follow? Is your goal to seize real power within the clan, isn't it? Kental lowered his voice. Am I wrong? Hearing this, she secretly thought of a perfect response, but just quietly nodded. Thoughts grew thicker and thicker within her, but the answer remained accurate. Yeah, it's a common story for a concubine's child to have to take on dangerous challenges to inherit the clan. Mylna focused her gaze on him, thinking to herself that this barbarian was truly sharp, unlike those arrogant brutes, and possessed the strength to take down the white python without breaking a sweat. How great it would be if this force belonged to her side. Afterwards, she said loudly, Kental, if you intend to leave the ice plains, why don't you come with me? Kental froze when he heard her ask. He politely replied, for now I refuse, I still have work to complete. Mylna lowered her face, smiling lightly. I understand. She clenched her hand, then immediately produced a necklace. Will you accept this? Mylna smiled radiantly. If you have the chance to go outside and find the Akasa clan, show them this piece. Not wanting to disappoint her, he broke into a bright smile. If this is a gift, I will gladly accept it. The butler accompanying them expressed his respect, thanking him sincerely. Kental looked at the string while saying regretfully, someday I hope we can meet again. She quickly replied, definitely. Then Kental watched the carriage go, his heart heavy with sadness. Time passed a year later in the Ice Plains. Finally, all conditions were met. The system board appeared, quest 784 completed, reward granted, conditions met, you can leave the Ice Plains. Kental walked with courage, finally taking his first step outside that place. A bright smile bloomed on his face as he stepped into the fantasy world he had long craved. Kental closed his eyes, enjoying the scent of young grass, the smell of animals, the smell of rivers, all the things that the white snowy region lacked. He smiled slightly, his face filled with enjoyment. Great, truly wonderful. Opening his eyes, he admired this place with pride. Previously, he had stood before the snowy region and shouted, damn white snow region, I hope I never have to see you again. But now, the scenery was fresh and pleasant. This was the fantasy world. It was lush green with gentle sunlight, the world he had once dreamed of, a world he once thought he could never touch, a world full of wonders and the unknown. Although it started in the worst way, he had survived. He thought to himself, if that's the case, I will enjoy this world, magic and swordsmanship. Dragons and elves, everything a fantasy world can offer. He stood silently on the lush green grass. If it weren't for that longing, I probably would have died long ago. The white snow region was a hell that sheer will to survive alone was not enough to overcome. Looking into the distance, he saw something strange. He suddenly thought, ahead, there is a place where I can feel a lot of vitality. Kental laughed happily. That must be a village. Could I finally see a real human settlement in this world? Kental remembered when he tried to explain to those foolish barbarians the importance of having a proper shelter. While they only knew how to dig holes to sleep in the snow and look at him as if he were speaking an alien language. He truly missed human villages, sturdy and orderly. Kental closed his eyes again, wondering how to greet them politely when meeting new people in this world. Standing and admiring the mountains and lush green trees, he told himself, No matter what, I will approach in a polite manner. The ancient trees here were well tended and very lush. Afterward, an arm of the elf village elder pointed ahead and declared loudly, "Villagers of Elf, from now on, this will be our new home." Hearing this, the villagers from old to young were overjoyed, their faces beaming with radiance. Standing up high, the old village elder shouted, "Good, hurry and unload the luggage." The people below were extremely excited, screaming continuously. Suddenly, a young man with blonde hair approached him. Elder," the elf elder replied with a cold, somewhat annoyed expression. "Is something the matter?" The young man stammered as he explained, "Are you sure? Is this place really safe?" He closed his eyes, looking tired. Safe. Other villagers were busily tidying up their belongings, everyone happy and cheerful. Then the young man continued, "This is an extremely remote wilderness. Humans cannot reach here." He hesitated. "I know that, but isn't the white snow region right next door?" The elf elder rolled his eyes at him, making the young man even more tense. "You're worried that monsters from the white snow region might wander here, right?" The young man scratched his head and replied hesitantly, "It's really close, too close." He said sternly, "There's no problem at all. For thousands of years, nothing has crawled out of the white snow region. Furthermore, to be safe, I have erected a barrier." A beautiful scene appeared with a barrier that masked their presence, making this place look like a normal forest. It took several months to set up. It's an ancient elf technique that we worked hard to reconstruct. As long as the barrier exists, no one will be able to approach us. And even if monsters from the white snow region do appear, we will still be fine. We have the queen. The elf elder's face was full of confidence and pride. "Not even the monsters of the white snow region can touch our queen." Kentil, following along in the forest, looked up and thought to himself, "Sounds like something tore. Did I break something?" His steps were slow as he wasn't used to this place, and he gradually became discouraged. Really, how much further do I have to go? He was suddenly drawn by a small little girl, who seemed to be lost in the forest. He was surprised by this sight. Elf, one of the first races one thinks of when mentioning a fantasy world. An image of a perfect elf woman suddenly appeared in his mind. Kentil smiled with interest, didn't expect to meet one so soon. Good fortune is truly smiling on me. I'm glad I survived through it all. While the little girl was terrified and burst into tears in the forest. "I'm so scared, I don't know where I am, what to do, I must have gone too far." Sitting down to rest, imagining the shade of the trees. But the little girl was still panicked by Kentil, a man with a large frame and a fierce face who suddenly smiled in a friendly manner. "Hi." Because he was as large as a monster, the little girl froze for a few seconds, then collapsed to the ground. The landscape was beautiful, with birds gliding by. Kentil didn't know what to do with the little girl, so he also froze for a moment. The girl fainted and he narrowed his eyes. "I hadn't even had a chance to say anything and the child fainted. Perhaps I should take this child back to the village." Kentil walked along while thinking about the beautiful scenery before him. According to mythology, elves were originally a peaceful and organized species. If I bring back a fainted child, they might view me as a good person. I wonder how hospitable the elves are. A smile remained on his face. "To be honest, I'm a bit excited." A large hand gently picked the little girl up. Suddenly, the villagers discovered him and screamed in panic. "No way, a human, even here, no." Everyone was wary of Kent, some holding weapons, others crying. One shouted loudly, "You there, who are you? How did you get past the barrier?" Kent lost his interest. Things were not going according to plan. The mother cried out for her child, and the other elves were also panicked. "No way, this place is supposed to be devoid of humans. Why is he here? There's supposed to be a barrier, how?" The villagers around stammered, "Elder, there's a crack in the barrier." He shook his head. "Impossible. Where is the queen right now?" Everyone was alarmed. "Her Majesty is out exploring the surrounding area." Kent raised his hands to explain but couldn't stop the villagers. "I am not your enemy." The mother was still worried about the little girl. "If you don't return the child, I will chase you to the ends of the earth." An old man knelt down. "I've been exposed. This barrier was built with the ancient secret arts of the elf tribe. A normal person could never approach it. If it has been breached, then it can only be that the humans have prepared for this in advance." He watched silently, realizing they thought he was a kidnapper. Looking down at the little girl, he thought he had to explain everything clearly. The noise caused the little girl to wake up, and her eyes opened. Kentil immediately dropped the little girl. "Hey, go back, return to your people." The little girl looked up at Kel's fierce face, then immediately burst into tears streaming down, and ran quickly toward her parents. "Is my face really that scary?" He froze for a while, Back in the snowy region, he thought his face was normal. Facing the villagers, he spoke up. I have returned the child. You elves, as you can see, I am not your enemy. But the old village elder shouted an order. The hostage has been released. Immediately after, everyone began shooting arrows at him continuously. Kental hadn't had a chance to explain, thinking to himself, can a guy even get a word in? Kale's face darkened. Turns out elves in real life were wilder than he thought. Completely different from the legends about a peaceful species that loves nature and seeks peace. In reality, elves live in the wilderness where the strong survive. It's not peaceful at all. Their ruthlessness is also understandable. Kental rested his chin on his hand, thoughtfully watching the incoming arrows. So that's how it is in reality. Finding it strange, the elder thought, what kind of instrument or magic is he using? He definitely has a limit, keep attacking. On the contrary, Kanto was calm. He prepared his hands to cast magic. Stay calm. The magic began to reveal itself, hands clasped together, his eyes glowing with purple light. An explosion accompanied by a tornado appeared, causing everyone to panic, hurrying to dodge his defensive magic. Kanto's magic sent everyone flying high into the air, the aftermath of the battle echoing far away. The elf village elder's hands were shaking, his eyes turned pale and he hesitated. What is this? Kanto created a large hole, standing upright and looking at the villagers. I am not your enemy. He clasped his hands together and thought, damn it, did I underestimate my own strength? Before he could finish his sentence, a spark suddenly flew past Kanto's head, exploding and creating a loud noise. The elf village elder was stunned by the sight. Long hair, blue doll shoes, standing up high. None other than the queen of the leaf tribe, Maria Hajin Karuja. She held her weapon and demanded of the villagers, what happened? The old village elder held his staff and said, a human attack. She lowered her head and said quietly, so the time has come. Then she gently looked up. Even this place is not safe. Before the dim smoke, Kanto hurriedly spoke up. Wait. He stood frozen, trying to say, I want you to listen to me first. Maria was panicked and the elder was also surprised. Impossible, he took the queen's direct blow and is still intact. From up high, Maria remained calm, her gaze sharp. Are you also a strong enemy who has come to harm us? Her eyes narrowed. Humans are truly despicable. Her bow and arrow slowly aimed directly at him. I am the queen of the leaf tribe, the leaves that change color with the weather. She glanced at Kanto. Human. The bow and arrow are ready. You will pay the price for daring to covet us. Kanto thought continuously. Is it impossible to even have a conversation? I clearly used the common language. Did she intentionally ignore me, or is the relationship between humans and elves that bad? At that moment, Kanto remembered the lesson from the Ice Plains. If they won't listen, just fight until they have to listen. Maria's bow and arrow appeared, and a fierce creature began to charge toward Kanto. Kanto immediately threw a punch to fight back. His strength gradually spread out, surprising Maria. Suddenly, Kanto felt regretful for striking too hard, and Maria collapsed to the ground. Kanto scratched his face, his eyes changing. Perhaps I should have reduced the force a little. She widened her eyes in horror, feeling frustrated and uncomfortable. Just through a little clash, she realized, the opponent is extremely strong, at least at a transcendent level. Why would someone that strong appear here? Maria showed signs of utter exhaustion. Everyone, leave this place immediately. Everyone was panicked and hesitant. His Highness was furious and shouted, go, everyone run now. The people obeyed him immediately. Yes. Everyone quickly departed. Maria was extremely angry. Human, I acknowledge your ability, but you will never achieve your goal. Kanto was dissatisfied because no one gave him a chance to explain. No, I just wanted to talk. Why did everything turn into such a mess? After that, Maria muttered a few magic spells under her breath. You, the one who holds the essence of primeval purity. You, the one who incinerates the deep night manifest. O horn-crowned spirit who embraces the purest flame. Her intense gaze flared up. Magic flowed from her hands, and a creature emerged. Kanto should have been terrified, but on the contrary, he was incredibly intrigued. Summoned creatures from the ice wasteland were all monstrous and bizarre. Kanto thought of mythological beasts, but this one was even more horrifying. He looked at the creature in front of him, a dairy cow with flaming horns. His eyes sparkling as if he had found a treasure. A true spirit beast, it's full of mystery. Maria ordered the creature, Figo, destroy the enemy before you. Suddenly, the creature sighed. Summoning via contract is always such a pain, it only brings trouble. Maria yelled, shut up. Looking at Figo, she thought, the more powerful and ancient a spirit is, the more arrogant it becomes. Normally, I couldn't summon this level. But thanks to the support of another tribe, I was reluctantly able to form a contract. I didn't expect to have to summon it in this situation. Fulfill the contract, Figo, Maria grimaced, showing clear anxiety and gravity. The condition was to kill the human standing before her. Figo began to hesitate before the heavy-duty opponent, this person. A powerful fiery bull appeared. Kento looked at it with sparkling eyes full of admiration. Amazing, a real summoned spirit beast. This is what a fantasy world is truly like. Maria's voice rang out, leaving him rigid. A human has trespassed into our dwelling. Figo seemed unhappy. Does a lowly human dare to covet the race of nature? I have decided I will incinerate you until not even ashes remain. Kento stood stunned by the current situation. Figo's eyes flashed, beginning to channel energy, and the mana flow around it shifted. Its hind legs generated power, and its tail lashed out vigorously. Figo quickly charged toward Kento with mighty momentum. Kento stared blankly at the flaming bull charging at him. A great tremor erupted, and earth and rocks were scattered. Maria, standing from afar, was also affected by the aftershock and quickly shielded herself. She looked toward the battle with eyes full of shock, and through the hazy dust, an arm reached out and grabbed Figo's horn. The dust gradually cleared, and Figo could not believe the scene before its eyes. Kento smirked. Actually, a beast is even better. He gripped the horn tightly with one hand, pulled the other back, and clenched it into a fist. I don't mind beating it to death with my bare hands. Kento unleashed a devastating punch straight at Figo's head. A burst of energy flashed, radiating an extremely powerful shockwave, and the explosive impact tore through the entire forest. The explosion was so massive that the aftershock spread across an entire continent. At the center of the battle, successive horrific explosions occurred, and Maria also suffered heavy pressure from the aftermath of the battle. Kento continued to pummel his opponent. A moment later, when the battle finally ceased, Maria couldn't help but kneel and let out a sigh of relief. What was that? She looked at the desolate scene and the man standing in the middle of the grounds, unable to believe it. Maria was speechless, watching Kento approach. She bowed her head in fear. Please spare my tribe. Kento looked down at the one trembling at his feet. I am not your enemy. Maria was stunned by his words, looking up with a suspicious gaze. What? Kento calmly explained everything to Maria's surprise. After a long debate, everyone finally accepted the truth. He was truly not the enemy. Maria bowed her head apologetically. Forgive me, human, we were too quick to judge. She thought back to his expression earlier, having misunderstood the person who saved her tribe's child for a kidnapper. It was truly too rude. Kento crossed his arms and smiled helplessly. It's okay, I understand. You said you were being hunted by humans, right? Still, it's a bit sad that you never tried to hear me out. Maria still had some doubts. Are you really not one of those hunting us? Kento answered calmly, this is the first time I've met an elf. There are no elves in the White Snow region. Maria looked surprised again. What, the White Snow region? Her words made Kento surprised as well. That name, the Savage of the White Snow, is just what those outsiders call me. Maria continued to be suspicious. No way, we always thought no human could survive there. She suddenly became worried. If you could leave the White Snow region, is it possible that other things could get out too? Kento shrugged. Who knows, but I don't think so. Not everyone can just leave like that. He thought of the giant snake. And that strange quest board. The White Snow region has its own rules. Even creatures as strong as that snake cannot break them. For some reason, I was granted a way out. Through something called a quest. Kento showed a contemplative look. I'm sure I'm an extremely rare exception. Maria breathed a sigh of relief. Well, that's fortunate then, Kento asked. By the way, is your spirit beast okay? He scratched his face shyly. That fire bull, I cut it in half. Maria stood up and reassured him. Don't worry, spirit beasts are creatures of nature. If defeated, they just return to the spirit realm. Spirit beast? He asked again. She looked at him seriously. I apologize for the trouble I caused. If there is anything you want, as long as it is within my power, I will grant it. Kento was still thinking about what she had just said. He asked, then, can a non-elf establish a contract with a spirit beast? Maria seemed uncertain. That is almost impossible, I think so. She continued to analyze. Of course, if a human is truly deeply connected to nature, it might be possible to form a contract with a spirit beast, which means the possibility is extremely low. Maria was silent at his sharp words. She made a suggestion. If you really want a contract with a spirit beast, try going to Elfer Sagrado. Maria thought of a lush, vibrant land. That is where the elf god resides, the most sacred place for the elf race. In that place you might have a chance. Kento pointed at himself happily. Can someone like me, a human, enter? Maria explained, normally no, but with an introduction from me, you can. I will give you a map, but please keep it to yourself. Maria thought of that land, then summoned a fireball. The elf sanctuary Elfer Sagrado, it is a place every elf scholar dreams of. She thought of the savage warriors, but for elves, a human approaching that place is extremely dangerous. To protect a place more precious than life itself, elves have never revealed the location to outsiders. A red crystal appeared in Maria's hand. Even so, I still want to trust you. She handed it to Kental. Take this. He received the crystal. I accept, thank you. Maria thought of a guardian god. Of course, even if you manage to approach it, our god will certainly test you. She smiled at him, but with you, I don't think that's a problem. I wish you luck. Thanks. Maria happily introduced herself. I am the queen of the leaf tribe, the leaves that turn brown in autumn, Maria Hajan Karuja, and your name. Kental smiled and replied, I am Kental, the savage of the white snow region. A powerful foot stomped down, shattering the ground. Kental exerted energy and leaped off. He landed and then jumped up again, the sound echoing through the treetops, continuing to leap continuously through the forest. North Hand Border Gene Kingdom, a guard panicked. What is that? What's happening? Another answered, I don't know, something is coming. The North Hand Border Guard captain was tense, hurriedly ringing the bell to assemble all the guards. Successive explosions occurred all around, heading toward the citadel. Familiar boots appeared in the hazy dust. The dust cleared and a figure was revealed. The guards could not contain their fear, trembling. You. Kental offered a friendly smile. Are you guards? Very pleased to meet you. The atmosphere turned silent. The guards were tense, their bodies shaking. Was that loud noise caused by this guy? The North Hand Border Guard captain looked at Kental with a fearful gaze, recognizing the scar on his chest. He recalled the image of the man standing in the snowy sky, the savage. Kental stepped closer to the group. The guards immediately raised their weapons. Stand there, one more step and we will attack. Kental calmly explained, I would be very grateful if you calmed down. I am not your enemy. The North Hand Border Guard captain questioned, what do you want from us? Kental slowly raised a finger, and without saying a word, pointed in one direction. The North Hand Border Guard captain looked in surprise, unable to hide his shock. A citadel. Kental answered seriously with a blank face. I want to enter your territory. The guards looked at him blankly. A moment later, a voice rang out in the room. Want to enter the territory, just passing through? Kental rubbed his chin in thought, if possible. I want to stay for a while, I'm not sure for how long. The North Hand Guard captain continued, so you intend to stay for a while. What is your name? I am Kental. Do you have anyone to vouch for you or any identification? I don't have anything like that. Kental's expression suddenly changed. He remembered Milna smiling as she gave him an item. Thank you, Kental. If you ever leave, please present this token if you wish to find House Akasa. Kental took the token from his pocket and placed the item on the table. Then what about using this as confirmation? The North Hand Border Guard captain was a bit surprised. What is that? Kental sat with his arms crossed. The family crest of House Akasa. I received it from someone of their bloodline. The guard captain checked it. House Akasa is the merchant family of the Daniel Kingdom, right? The captain held the token in his hand. The family that came to the White Snow region a few years ago. Kental was surprised. You know them. The guard captain didn't hide it. That family has been rising recently. Since the new head took over a few years ago, they have expanded very quickly. Kental asked, so can this be used as identification? The North Hand Border Guard captain looked troubled. It doesn't look like a fake, but it's still hard to verify as it doesn't belong to this kingdom. This is the Chen Kingdom. The guard captain placed the item back on the table. Even if it cannot be verified, it is still useful. Fine, you can enter, but there is a condition. Kental was surprised. A condition. The guard captain was serious. Verification is needed. We need to ensure you are not dangerous. Kental asked back, slightly suspicious. A squad, the captain explained. Currently there are 3 others applying to enter the territory. The condition is to work with them to clear a dungeon near the territory. Kental rubbed his chin. Teaming up is the condition. That's easier than I thought. Kental happily agreed. Fine, I accept, but there is one more condition. The guard captain looked at him seriously. After clearing the dungeon, I want you to report in detail everything that happened inside. Kental smiled sharply. I see, it seems you aren't sure of their identities either, so you need to watch each other, taking this opportunity to weed out suspects. Not a bad plan, actually quite smart. The North Hand Border Guard captain was shocked. Not only that, are you truly a savage? Kental nodded. Yes, I'm a savage. The North Hand Border Guard captain was secretly fearful. I always thought savages were a stupid species. You are the first savage to make me rethink that. He stood up. Anyway, that's enough talk, let's go. A man with a mustache sighed. Even if it's the law, having to enter a dungeon with some sewer rat pickpockets. The man who called himself Paladin Alexandro Tiranu looked uncomfortable. How annoying. The thief Cassin Hack also seemed disgusted. What's your problem? The old man wants to pick a fight with me because he lost all his money to a thief. Alexandro was angry. You brat, you dare to insult a paladin. Cassin looked down on him. Paladin, my foot. Do paladins these days wear armor like that? If you were really a paladin, you wouldn't have shown your face here. You just call yourself a wandering paladin, right? His words made Alexandro uneasy. You are just a drifter like me. Alexandro grabbed his sword as Cassin continued to mock him. Tyrannus, where did you dig up a name like that for yourself? He angrily drew his sword. You bastard. Cassin lightly twirled the dagger in his hand. Want to try your luck? Do you think those rags of armor can withstand a blow from me? Cassin's blade began to leak a strange, green substance. Alexandro gripped his sword tightly with all his might, and as the metal clashed, it emitted a brilliant platinum light. A voice spoke up, I truly wish you two would stop. A priestess appeared, sighing as she looked at the two men preparing to fight. Pris H of Kaloja sat in the corner, sighing, do I really have to go dungeon clearing with this bunch? Is this going to be alright? She tried to analyze the situation. Hey, the dungeon requires at least 4 people, someone else is coming. Pris appeared worried. A sound made her jump. The captain of the Northern Hand Guards pushed the door open and stepped in. The final member has arrived. Cassin was excited. I hope this one is an actual normal person, let's see. A foot wrapped in carefully prepared animal hides stepped inside. Kental stepped into the room with an imposing presence. The people in the room panicked when they saw him. Kental smiled, is it you guys, the ones who will be in a party with me? Alexandro secretly marveled, he's huge. Pris couldn't hide her amazement. Is that really a human? Cassin also acted fearful. What is this pressure? Kental enthusiastically waved his hand in greeting. Nice to meet you. The captain of the Northern Hand Guards instructed. All right, introduce yourselves, I'll be right back. Ken looked toward everyone, so let's start with the introductions. I am Kental, a barbarian. He looked blankly at Cassin. How about you? I am Cassin Black, I am a thief. A thief, huh? Alexandro coughed to interrupt. I am a paladin, Alexandro Tyrannus. As a paladin, can you use holy power? He stammered, normally yes, but I'm a special case. In reality, I can't use it. Kental looked confused. I see. Pris also spoke up. I worship the god of lies and deception. I am Pris, a priestess of Kaloja. You're a priestess, nice to meet you. Kental was a bit surprised. Even as a priestess, your status is still unclear. Pris acted shy. The god I worship is Koja, the god of deceit and illusions. My god doesn't have the best reputation. I see. The captain of the Northern Hand Guards pushed the door open to enter while everyone was chatting. If you're ready, let's go. Kental and Alexandro didn't reveal any emotions, while Pris and Cassin were slightly uneasy. A moment later, the captain of the Northern Hand Guards spoke. We've arrived. Kental was surprised by the scenery around him. The guard captain stood before a cave, introducing, this is the dungeon entrance. He continued as everyone paid attention. A 3-story dungeon, we will be facing immortal monsters. Kental broke into a confident smile at those words. Clear the dungeon and bring back the badge. Kental started the conversation. Now we will get to planning. Can you explain it? The thief Cassin Black panicked, cold sweat breaking out. He stammered, Sir Kental. Kental replied pleasantly, you don't need to be formal, we're teammates, right? The thief felt shy, scratching his head and laughing awkwardly. He began to regain his composure. So he proceeded to seriously outline the plan for everyone. Kental and the knight will charge, forming the front line. I will handle trap detection and the priestess will stay in the back to provide magical support during the battle. What does everyone think? Hearing this, Kental's eyes lit up with excitement. I understand clearly, which made Cassin Black laugh shyly. The 4 of them lined up in an incredibly strong and passionate formation. Then let's get moving. Scene shift to the evening. All 4 looked worried and alert as they were still on their way. They were nearly at the battle location, but it was very dark. Pris was fearful. Oh my god, I can't see anything. Cassin Black broke into a cold sweat, his heart filled with anxiety. There were no guards or traps whatsoever. Everything looked strangely peaceful. Suddenly, Cassin's sharp eyes discovered something unusual. He stepped toward Kent, glanced sideways, and patted his shoulder. Wait, stop, there are monsters. Kentel replied blankly. I don't see anything. But Casson Black pointed at the bone fragments on the ground. Do you see those bones scattered on the ground? Those are skeletons. Just take one more step and they will come back to life and lunge at us. Casson's gaze was cold, thinking to himself, just as I suspected, that despicable guard captain knew everything. This dungeon isn't a training challenge, but a trap to eliminate outsiders from the very start. Kentel heard Casson speak and pondered. Skeletons, huh? Casson continued to lecture, warning everyone, skeletons are not the type of monsters that are easy to deal with. Even if their bodies are damaged or their limbs are severed, they still move normally. Furthermore, with bodies made of bone, their defensive capabilities are also incredibly sturdy. The difficulty of this dungeon exceeds my expectations. Casson Black began assigning tasks. Hey priestess, get your magic ready. Old man, prepare your shield well. Kent, you need to be ready too. I will focus on finding openings during the fight. Even if their bodies are destroyed, they still move, so we must aim for the weak point at the neck. Furthermore, because they are so hard, you have to strike the same spot multiple times to bring them down. Kentel praised. Excellent leadership, I understand. Casson moved toward the pack of skeletons on the ground as he spoke. Kentel widened his eyes, looking at the skeletons. Whoa. The skeletons were standing up to prepare for battle. Alexandro had already prepared his shield firmly. Pris clasped her hands to chant a spell, while Casson was also ready, focusing on the tense battle. The battle began. Kent swung his hand to deliver a punch to a skeleton, causing it to shatter instantly. The time taken to destroy the skeletons was too fast and easy for Kentel, leaving himself and everyone else stunned. Kentel was happy, beaming as he said, Oh, Casson, you were right. You just have to smash the head and they stop moving. Casson laughed awkwardly, surprised by Kent's overwhelming power. However, he thought to himself, that wasn't what I meant. Skeletons are creatures made of bone, and their bones are as hard as steel, difficult to break. Even for an experienced swordsman, if they couldn't use aura, it would be nearly impossible to cut through bone in a single strike. Not to mention the skeletons were enhanced by the dungeon's magic. The only way to destroy them was to focus attacks on the neck, like felling a large tree. You have to break their cervical vertebrae. It's unbelievable that one could blow their heads off and crush them into dust like that. Casson had cold sweat rolling down his face, his eyes incredibly tense. He was still struggling with thoughts about Kentel. I knew he was strong from the start, but not to that extent. Is he truly human? The three members of the team were still stunned by the battle with the skeletons, which they thought would be very difficult, but were wiped out by just one punch from Kentel. Kentel stood on his tiptoes. Happily, that's right, let's keep moving. Seeing this, Kentel looked confused. No need to be in such a hurry. Casson quickly replied, yes. Alexandro and Pris were still fearful. I don't want to lose my life in this place. Walking a few steps, Kentel stopped because he saw something unusual. Under his feet appeared the head of a skeleton. The people behind called out to Kentel. While he was stunned, the scene before him was filled with multiple skeleton sets scattered across the ground. Pris panicked and shouted, skeletons. Casson at this moment also realized the unusual circumstance. This time it's for real, they are charging. Suddenly Kentel spoke, can I ask you all for a favor? The remaining three asked back in confusion, what is it? Kent said coldly and arrogantly, let me handle these annoying bones myself, I want to test a few things. Hearing this, Casson jumped at the chance, quickly answering, ah yes, do as you please. With a face like he'd struck gold, I agree too. Kentel's eyes suddenly shone with a purple light, a mysterious smile on his lips. Thanks a lot. The battle began. The skeleton holding a weapon was slowly standing up. The three others all wondered in their hearts, what is he planning to do? Kentel remained carefree, quite confident. He wondered, what is this structure? Quite strange. The skeleton began casting a technique, swinging its weapon toward Kentel to attack. But Kentel easily held the sword back with 2 fingers. Now Kentel brought 2 fingers before his face, closed them, his eyes glowing with purple light, and began casting a technique. Now, what are you going to do? Around the skeleton, a strange turquoise light emanated as it raised its sword to prepare for battle. A golden light flashed on the wooden staff. The battle ensued. The skeleton swung its sword to slash at Kentel. However, Kentel tilted his head to dodge the strike incredibly easily. He gripped the skeleton's hand tightly and wore a smug smile. Suddenly, the skeleton's hand fell straight to the ground along with the sword. Kentel stared intently at the remaining light on his own hand. The skeleton, having one hand broken, looked blankly and confused, its face looking completely hollow. Its eyes glowed with turquoise light, expressing indignation. The skeleton retrieved its sword with its remaining hand entering a battle-ready stance. Kental laughed, haha, so you can even switch hands. The skeleton angrily lunged quickly toward Kent. Suddenly, he grabbed the skeleton's remaining hand and snapped it off. Under the skeleton's feet appeared a strange light current, and it continued to attack Kental even more fiercely. However, the skeleton was easily held back by Kental again. He even mocked and was interested in its fighting style. Kental praised and even teased, "You can even change positions while fighting, you're really not average, are you?" Turning toward Kental's three teammates, he saw Pris was worried, trembling from head to toe, cold sweat pouring down. Cassin and Alexandro watched the fight, also panicked, cold sweat covering their faces. Cassin couldn't help but exclaim when he saw Kental holding the skeleton's head, his entire body covered in an intense purple light. "This is truly a madman." Kental smiled and waved, causing Cassin Black to panic and tremble. In an instant, a skull fell to the ground. Kental stood up high, glancing with disdain at the skull. He stepped on it, coldly saying, "So one can still move just by the head." The skull was smashed to pieces. He smiled slightly, saying, "How interesting." A moment later, Kental brushed his hands off. He smiled at everyone, saying, "Did you wait long? I apologize for keeping you waiting." Cassin Black heard that and immediately said loudly, "No, do whatever you want." Kental replied gently, "Thanks." He walked forward and said with a smile, "Then, let's keep going." The three of them, Cassin Black, Pris, and Alexandro, immediately responded in unison, "Yes." After walking for a while, Kental paused. He looked down. Cassin Black spoke up, "This is." Stairs appearing before everyone's eyes. Cassin Black continued, "The second floor." Kental's group silently walked down. Alexandro and Pris watched their surroundings alertly. A moment later, Cassin Black reached up to remove his face mask and let out a breath. He said softly, how about we rest for a bit?" Kental turned his head to look at everyone, rubbed his chin thoughtfully, and then said, "You have a point, a short rest is good." Cassin Black knelt down, bowing his head while saying loudly, "Thanks." Kental folded his arms, closing his eyes to rest. The other three also sat on the ground to rest. The air was a bit awkward. Kental opened the conversation, "I have a few questions about this dungeon." Pris looked at him and asked, "What is it?" Alexandro also opened his eyes to look at him. Kental smiled gently, "Honestly, I don't know much." Pris heard that and panicked, realizing she might have offended him, so she stammered, "No, a thirst for knowledge is something to be treasured. I don't know much either, but..." He heard that and said, "Thanks." Pris widened her eyes looking at him, curiously asking, "What are you wondering about?" Kental looked toward the people happily walking on the street and said, "This dungeon is quite close to the territory." He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "So, doesn't that cause problems with the dungeon and the monsters?" Pris heard that and explained, "Basically, monsters in the dungeon cannot spill out. Of course, there are exceptions, but those cases have all been monitored and handled from the start." Cassin Black reached up to rub his chin and coughed once. He remembered the scenes in the dungeon and said, "Dungeons are originally natural phenomena. Sometimes they are caves, sometimes they are towers. Dungeons usually appear near densely populated areas." Kental seemed to understand something and said softly, "That's why this dungeon is here." Pris looked at him and said, "When a dungeon appears, the territory evaluates the danger level. Then we, outsiders, mercenaries, or guards will step in to handle it." Kental curled his lip as if he'd heard something interesting and asked with a smile, "So that means there are no dungeons in the territory?" Pris shook her head. "No, dungeons only appear at a certain distance, far away from residential areas." Kental nodded, "I see." His face lit up, happily saying, "If it's a dungeon, there must be a reward after clearing it, right?" Pris imagined gold, silver, and jewels in her head and said, "That's right, on the final floor there will be a boss. If you defeat the boss, you will receive various rewards. With a dungeon like this, the reward is definitely not bad." Kental smirked, just like playing a game. Pris heard that and wondered, "What is a game?" Kental replied, "I was just muttering to myself." He looked at her and said, "I have one more question." Pris hesitated. "Yes, go ahead." He lowered his voice, "Who created this dungeon?" Pris heard that and was stunned, several question marks appearing over her head. She said in surprise, "What? Dungeons form naturally, no one creates them." Kental imagined a hand controlling the people, and voiced his thoughts, "That seems hard to believe. First off, they always appear near inhabited areas as if someone intentionally set them up for us to explore." The image of a snake coiling tightly around an apple flashed in his mind, and he thought to himself, "They appear near crowded places and even lure us in with attractive rewards." Kental crossed his arms and said coldly, I find that to be more of an artificial setup than a natural phenomenon. Pris was startled by this realization. That actually makes a lot of sense. She rested her chin on her hand and thought, I've never thought of it from this perspective because I've always assumed it was normal. Cass and Hack also bowed his head and thought, actually, I've never thought deeply about it. No, I haven't even tried, because it's a clear principle and undeniable truth. How could this savage dare to doubt such an obvious truth? He broke into a light sweat while contemplating. Savages have always been a stupid and brutal species after all. Cass and Hack recalled the image of Kental in the snowstorm standing atop a terrifying corpse. He thought to himself, heartless and cold-blooded, that fact has never changed. The image of Kental's dangerous, glowing eyes in the snow flashed in his mind. Cass and Hack pondered, if what I know is true, is this savage really just a normal savage? Suddenly a voice rang out, cutting off Cass and Hack's train of thought. Kental chuckled and said, this is getting interesting. He stood up with a smile. Are you all done resting? The group was startled, stood up and replied in unison, oh yes. Kental turned and started walking, waving his hand with a smile. Then let's continue. Cass and Hack immediately responded, yes. A while later, Kental's group continued moving forward, everyone looking around vigilantly. Kental moved forward calmly, ignoring the anxiety of those behind him, until he suddenly noticed something and stared fixedly at it. A golden locked treasure chest appeared before him. Kental asked curiously, what's that? Cass and Hack looked at the treasure chest and said, that's a treasure chest, one of the rewards from the labyrinth. If you can open it, the treasure belongs to you. In his heart, Cass and Hack imagined the people who had opened treasure chests filled with gold, and he thought, easier said than done. To open this high-level chest, you need a skilled thief, at least proficient in lock-picking. If someone has reached that level, they wouldn't need to risk their lives in this dungeon. Too bad, I guess we'll have to skip this chest. Suddenly, a voice rang out, interrupting his thoughts. Kental looked at him and said, Cassin, open it. Cassin was extremely bewildered, thinking, what the? Kental looked at the treasure chest and said, it's a treasure chest. Then he looked at Cass and Hack and said, and you're a thief, right? This is your job. Cass and Hack's face turned pale and he stammered, right. But Kental's face lit up with excitement. Isn't opening treasure chests a thief's job? That's why I told you to try. I want to see a thief's talent with my own eyes. Cass and Hack grimaced, thinking, oh boy, that's not wrong, but there's a problem. On the surface, Cass and Hack still smiled, but internally he was helpless, placing his hands on his head, thinking, if I could do it, I wouldn't be here doing this. He gaped, panicked, his whole body turning to stone, whispering to himself, a lousy thief not recognized by any guild, where would I get lockpicking skills? But I can't tell them the truth. Cass and Hack glanced at Kental, who was watching him with hope-filled eyes. He thought, that look is full of expectation. If I try and fail, it will turn into disappointment instantly. He imagined Kental looking at him with cold, intimidating eyes and saying, you call yourself a thief but can't even do that? Useless. He remembered Kental stepping on the skull earlier and felt terrified. Internally, Cass and Hack screamed in misery, but outwardly he scratched his head, smiled and said, haha, alright then, I'll give it a try. A moment later, Kental looked at Cass and Hack with admiring eyes as he opened the chest, saying excitedly, oh, you use those kinds of tools to pick locks, impressive. Cass and Hack felt immense pressure, thinking nervously, he's staring at me from behind, if I fail, I'm dead. He tensely recalled watching a thief pick a chest lock back in the day, trying to remember the skills he had seen while working as a porter. The more he thought, the greater the pressure. Sweat pouring down continuously, he thought to himself, betting my whole life on this. Thief Cassin, the screams from your soul. Suddenly, Cassin opened his eyes wide, looking extremely surprised, shocked, and trembling. Kental, seeing this, was curious. It turned out the thief had accidentally used his hidden talent to open the chest. He was so happy he shed tears, exclaiming, hey, it opened. H, standing to one side, was very happy and eager. Oh, really? I heard only master thieves can open this treasure chest. I didn't expect to meet someone who could do it right here. Amazing. Kental was pleasantly surprised by this and gave a thumbs up. Is that so? Well done, Cassin. Hearing the praise, Cassin's expression wasn't happy at all. He was bewildered, thinking it shouldn't have opened, right? Why is it like this? Just looking at it and it opened. This skill is too overpowered. Cassin had always been proud of his ability to survive, but now, for the first time, he doubted the meaning of this life. He was still dazed, standing motionless. Did I really try my best? And just like that, Cassin lost his pride. Kental approached the treasure chest, looked at it, and asked curiously, By the way, how much is this treasure worth? H also stepped forward to look and said, well, with this amount, a family could live luxuriously for a whole month. Casson was still unable to escape the doubts about his own existence. Kentel smiled and replied, I see, noted. Then he turned to look at the thief Casson and said, Casson, you handle the splitting of the rewards. The thief Casson was snapped out of it by Kentel's call and shouted in fear, yes. At this moment, Casson approached the chest and gently lifted a trophy. He was dazed while looking at the sparkle of the trophy, staring at it unconsciously for a long time. Suddenly, someone called to him in an eerie voice, Casson. Casson was frightened by the voice and screamed, oh, it was just Kentel calling him. Kentel asked, do you need any help? Casson was now scared to the point of panting. Kentel, seeing this, asked further, are you hurt? The thief Casson was startled as if caught red-handed and shouted, no, I didn't do anything. The three people present were extremely confused. A while later, Kentel's group took everything from the treasure chest and left. While walking, Kentel suddenly discovered something ahead, stopped and said, wait, it's skeleton soldiers. At this moment, a pile of bones lay scattered on the ground ahead. Kentel's group stopped when they saw this. Kentel counted the skulls and exclaimed, I see 4 of them, I'll handle 3. The 3 people behind him, Casson, H, and Alexandro, were startled. Kentel offered a creepy smile at the pile of bones and said, the last one is for you guys. The thief Casson responded immediately, understood. But internally he thought, this is real combat, this is going to be tough. Alexandro also nodded, yes. Kentel immediately rushed forward. Suddenly, the bones on the ground flared with a green light. The thief Casson saw this and broke into a cold sweat, thinking, no matter how many times I see it, watching the bones reassemble themselves is always creepy. Afterward, the bones seemed to have souls, reassembling themselves and standing up. The group saw this and backed away in fear. Only Kentel courageously stood his ground. Then the 4 skeleton soldiers rushed toward the group. Kentel ordered, everyone, let's go. Immediately, the 3 of them, Casson, H, and Alexandro, raised their hands, chanting holy magic spells, and a golden light surrounded the 3 of them. Come on. At this moment, the thief Casson bravely charged forward and threw a punch at one of the skeleton soldiers. The 3 remaining skeleton soldiers angrily prepared to charge. But suddenly, Kentel used his muscular arms to easily clamp down on their necks, leaving them completely surprised and shocked. He saw the thief Casson acting so bravely and exclaimed, this is a rare sight, don't mess it up, I'll handle the rest of you. The last skeleton soldier used all its might to swing its sword toward Alexandro. Alexandro quickly used his shield to block the skeleton soldier's strike, his gaze becoming more determined than ever. At this moment, the thief Casson suddenly leaped into the air, intending to take the opportunity to attack the skeleton soldier from behind. Casson raised his sword high. The skeleton soldier seemed to sense the danger from behind and glanced back. But Casson's speed was too fast. The skeleton soldier couldn't avoid it and was slashed to the ground by Casson. At this moment, H began to act, her eyes glowing brightly. Then she reached out her hand and shouted the name of the technique, Cloak of Darkness. Immediately, it seemed as though Alexandro was granted additional strength, and he quickly lunged forward at a dizzying speed. Alexandro struck the skeleton soldier by surprise. The skeleton soldier collapsed to the ground, its neck bones beginning to crack, but it didn't die and instead roared in anger. Kentel, standing to one side and witnessing his teammates, smiled happily and laughed. Haha. He held 2 large rocks in his hands and said happily, I never expected to witness such a perfect combat formation. Kentel smiled satisfactorily and continued, truly rare and hard to find. Afterward, he suddenly gently crushed the rock in his hand into dust. Kentel smiled again and said, now that the trouble is taken care of, let's enjoy ourselves. Saying that, Kentel quickly swung his blade at the remaining skeleton soldiers. A moment later, the 3 of them, Casson, H, and Alexandro, had cornered a skeleton soldier, seemingly having the same thought. The thief Casson thought, there's no doubt left. H broke into a cold sweat thinking that savage. Alexandro thought, he's challenging us. The skeleton soldier's eyes went wide, looking at the 3 of them with a pathetic face, blankly sitting silently in a corner. All 3, Casson, H, and Alexandro, had their eyes light up, angrily looking at the dazed skeleton soldier and thinking, if we show any weakness, we're done for. Then came continuous slashes, pouring all their effort onto that poor skeleton soldier. A while later, the skeleton soldier's head finally fell off. Alexandro wearily plunged his sword into the ground and slumped down. It wasn't just Alexandro. Casson and H also looked exhausted after destroying the skeleton soldier. All three were very tired, yet only Kental remained very energetic after single-handedly destroying the other three skeleton soldiers. He crossed his arms, thought about the past, and pondered. There was no longer any doubt, the people in the ice wasteland were actually quite good. Kental thought to himself, the third-floor monsters are also skeleton soldiers, the number is increasing. But thanks to Kental's leadership, we passed through easily, and finally. H and Alexandro looked worriedly at Kental, who was lost in thought. Casson was also very worried as he looked at Kental. The group had reached the deepest room, the center of the dungeon. A skeleton soldier knight was sitting there, motionless on a golden throne. H saw this and her eyes went wide and she stammered in shock. A skeleton knight, how could such a thing be here? Kental didn't quite understand and asked curiously, is it different from the previous ones? H replied, yes, it's extremely strong. H's expression was terrified. She pondered, a skeleton knight wielding a longsword with ease and power, unless one reaches the level of a knight, there's no chance of confronting it. This isn't a monster we can handle. At this moment, Kental continued to wonder, what if we don't defeat it and just turn back? H replied in confusion, there will be an investigation by the guild. If they find the reason reasonable, we won't get into any trouble. Suddenly, Kental heard this and smiled, then marched confidently forward with a confident smile and replied, that makes sense, the group exclaimed. The skeleton knight stood majestically, radiating a great source of power, looking dangerously at its opponents with a smile. Yet Kental didn't have a single trace of fear. He even thought, a skeleton that can maintain its form while fighting, that's interesting. Immediately, the skeleton knight entered an attack stance. H's face showed clear shock, and her reaction was very fast. She immediately created a barrier. But it was very dangerous. Two powerful mana sources were clashing. H seemed to be at a disadvantage, and soon the barrier shattered into pieces. Fortunately, Alexandro had managed to block the strike with his shield just in time. Then he fell and sat on the ground. This action made Kental glance over in admiration. Alexandro was extremely surprised. Was a single blow that strong? The skeleton knight's attack was truly too powerful. Not stopping there, lightning flashed in the skeleton knight's eyes again. This time, it swung its weapon even more powerfully. Yet Kental remained very calm. He stood and watched the skeleton knight approaching him. And unexpectedly, before the skeleton knight could act, Kental punched it, sending it flying, vanishing in an unexpected way. Casson gaped in shock, and Alexandro was equally stunned. Having finished, Kental casually brushed his hands with a look of disdain. Is that all it's got? After that, he turned to look at those around him. Suddenly, Kental's gaze went blank as if he had just discovered something. Then he called out Casson's name. Since he was called unexpectedly, he was a bit dazed. Yes. There was a treasure chest glowing brilliantly. Kental wanted to know if Casson could open it. Casson was startled and shouted, it's impossible, it's protected by a high-level lock. With my skills, I can't open it. Hearing this, Kental acted disappointed. Really? That's bad luck. Casson was also dejected. Such a pity, but I guess we'll have to give up. That seemed to be the case until Kental waved his hand and smashed the chest himself. Casson had another scare, and finally the chest shattered into pieces. Alexandro and H looked at him like he was an alien species. But Kental didn't care, the rewards looked very large. Casson, you handle the cleaning up. He immediately obeyed, approaching, still surprised internally. Opening a chest by using force like this is the first time I've seen it. One thing puzzled him, if he could break it, why ask me to unlock it? After completing the mission, everyone headed out together. The sky was sunny and beautiful, with birds singing. And something caught Kental's attention. The cave that the group had just entered suddenly exploded. Casson immediately explained, after the dungeon is cleared, it will disappear, so I guess there are no secret rooms this time. Kentalo heard this and became curious. A secret room? Does such a thing exist here? Casson confirmed. Even if it's dangerous, they truly exist. Upon receiving this information, Kental smirked excitedly. That sounds very interesting. Seeing this attitude of his made Casson feel confused. The guard captain had just heard something, his face clearly showing surprise. What? It's all done already. Just at this moment, outside the city, the guard captain inquired about the situation in the dungeon. Kental replied playfully, it was a lot of fun in there. The captain sighed in relief upon hearing this, realizing that was the case. Afterward he requested, everyone follow me. Sitting in a room, H said softly, there are no major problems. So the captain then pointed out, So do you think that Manji can stay in the territory? H appeared to object. I think it's probably fine. And the captain clearly realized one thing when talking about that Manji, she only spoke vaguely. He closed his eyes tensely. Conquering the dungeon wasn't the issue, but how it was accomplished. The real goal was to find out who the dangerous ones were. Casson added, he is not the type of person who will go around causing trouble. However, the captain knew clearly that he was strong as a beast but harmed no one. So different from an ordinary barbarian. Now Kental spoke up, praising each person. Casson did a great job as a rogue. He disabled traps and tried opening the chests. Alexandro is also an incredibly strong frontline warrior. Your prayers helped us a lot. The captain heard this and became suspicious. That's strange. Normally, when strangers are forced into a team to conquer a dungeon, they wouldn't praise others so warmly. Finally, he had to agree, very well, you are permitted to enter, but I have one warning, even though you have permission, if you cause trouble you will be expelled, so be careful. Kental affirmed, understood. Next, the captain produced a pouch. This is the conquest reward, everyone divide it amongst yourselves. As far as the captain knew, sometimes guards would just take the reward for themselves. Kental didn't think much of it and accepted it happily. Thank you very much. The captain guessed that this time they probably wouldn't touch it. Kental suggested, let's split it evenly then. They were stunned by this statement. H hurriedly refused, no need for that. Even Alexandro didn't dare to accept, me neither. However, Kental still tried to persuade them. The whole team worked on it, so the reward must be split evenly. You cannot refuse. Hearing this, Casson reluctantly agreed. All right. Just waiting for that, Kental invited them immediately. Then let's go celebrate, see if there's any tavern nearby. The group didn't expect this turn of events. What? Finally, they had to reluctantly agree. Celebrate? Sure. But in reality they were crying inside, I want to go home. While the others were gloomy, Kental was very enthusiastic. The captain looked on with disdain, a barbarian who killed a skeleton knight as strong as a monster with just a single punch. The captain looked on with disdain, a barbarian who killed a skeleton knight as strong as a monster with just a single punch. He switched to a probing gaze, thinking to himself, at least as strong as a knight, certainly not an ordinary manji. And I can guarantee that a legendary manji is an extraordinary being. Afterward, he sternly entrusted the task. I will report this to the Lord, you guys go guard the gate. The subordinates immediately received the order. Understood. It was nighttime now. At the vast royal palace, firelight illuminated a formal space. The emperor sat inside, his voice deep as he commanded, come in. The captain paid his respects and reported, I am here to report my lord. The lord of the Barcan region, John Kingdom at that time, spoke. What is it? The captain immediately presented. Reporting to the lord, a barbarian has entered the territory. That night at the waiting hall outside the mansion, a voice echoed in the room. You gave him permission. The guard captain of the Northern Han region lowered his head. That is correct, though it's not any trouble at all. Sitting on the golden throne, the lord looked down suspiciously. Then what is the real trouble? He reported with some tension. He is too powerful to the point that it has become a problem. He looked up wondering, how powerful is he? The room was silent, save for the voice of the guard captain of the Northern Han region and the Lord's surprise. They say he defeated a skeleton knight with a single blow. The Lord's eyes widened in astonishment. A skeleton knight. The type of monster that's hard to handle unless you're at the knight level. And he defeated it in just one punch. Afterward, he lowered his head, lost in thought about the large human standing in the blizzard, a barbarian who only knows how to use brute force, a simple mind with no education. Then the lord hesitated. So he is at the first rank, isn't he? The guard captain of the Northern Han region judged. That is likely the case. He wondered further, and could he be even stronger? The guard captain of the Northern Khan region's expression was full of tension. It cannot be confirmed for certain yet. Hearing this, he fell silent. A warrior who reaches such a level but is a barbarian, a race that believes strength is everything. This is going to be a big problem. He decided, for now, just summon him to meet me. Below, the guard captain of the Northern Khan region broke into a cold sweat, worried. Are you sure that will be all right? He judged. The mere act of letting someone that's strong roam freely in the territory is already a danger. Meeting him in person, I think, will be more reassuring. The guard captain of the Northern Han region tried to stop him, but it could be dangerous. A knight beside him stepped forward with a serious face. The The guard captain of the Northern Khan region sitting on the golden throne reminded him, "I have a knight to protect me personally." Seeing this, he also startled and looked up, then turned his head to look at the knight. "What do you think?" He gripped the sword at his waist and said, "He is strong truly, but he is only a barbarian, a large-muscled guy with no intelligence." Afterward, he recalled his majestic master and affirmed, "Compared to the swordsmanship I was taught directly by the sword saint, he is not on the same level, therefore you need not be afraid." The Lord also nodded in silent confirmation, and finally raised his voice, "Summon that barbarian here, I will converse with him face to face." Elsewhere, at a table full of food and beer, Kental bit into some meat and chewed voraciously. The three people at the table watched him eat like a starving man, their complexions pale, submerged in the chilly atmosphere. His hand raised the beer mug, and with a full display of goodwill he took a gulp and set it down on the table, smiling at the group. "This is delicious. I also really like the quiet atmosphere here. It's on me today, please eat and drink to your heart's content." Hearing this, the group looked at Kental and laughed awkwardly. Ha ha. Suddenly he turned. "You are a paladin, aren't you?" Alexandro startled. "Yes." Kental's face showed clear confusion. "What kind of holy power do you use? I didn't see you use it during the dungeon attack, did I?" Hearing this, Alexandro also awkwardly scratched his head and explained, "I am still training myself, so my holy power has not yet been activated." Kental widened his eyes regretfully. "Oh, that's unfortunate." Alexandro cleared his throat timidly. Then he turned to H, who was sitting quietly beside him. "You said the god you serve is Kaloja, right? Is there any temple of that god nearby?" She rolled her eyes in embarrassment and explained, No, I don't think so. He is not a god worshipped by many." She remembered the cold appearance of that god, surrounded by a snake, the god of lies and deception. Kaloja was shunned and rejected by everyone. H's hand gripped her dress tightly. Sir Kental," he replied. What's wrong?" she pressed. "How strong are you?" Seeing this, both Alexandro and Cassin also startled and looked toward him, while he continued chewing his food, looking at them in confusion. Afterward, Kental brought his hand to his chin, recalling the tears. "I'm not quite sure about the ranking. I haven't left the ice plains for long, so I'm also wondering how strong I am, how strong the skeleton knight I defeated was." Hearing this, H also widened her eyes and explained to him according to her own understanding. "It would have to be at least the second rank to have the strength to handle him. And if it's the first rank, they could defeat him as Sir Kental did." He judged, "Then I must be second rank." Suddenly, a man appeared before them with his hands sweating, trembling as he said, I'm sorry, our shop is about to close." Seeing this, Kental just smiled while the person became even more terrified. That's my fault, let's go." The group walked out of the shop. Does everyone have a plan or schedule coming up? Before his question, both Alexandro and H shouted in unison, "Yes, we do." Immediately after, Cassin also hurriedly yelled, "Yes, I'm very busy." He looked at them, both shy and regretful. "I see, what a pity. Then I guess we part ways here, see you all another day." The three of them thought of the image of a princess saying goodbye and were secretly happy. No need to meet again. That night, Kental lay with his legs propped up on the bed, closed his eyes comfortably and exclaimed, "Phew, so comfortable. The first time I've been able to lie on a bed since coming to this world." Before that, at the inn counter, the owner looked at him and drooled into the mug. Kental thought to himself that he was lucky to be able to stay at the inn thanks to the dungeon reward, and he didn't encounter too many troubles either. Currently, sunlight streamed through the window. He sat with his legs crossed on the bed, humming excitedly. Compared to the ice plains, this place is truly paradise. He recalled back when he was still in the ice plains, facing countless confusing system windows. It also took quite a while from when I woke up in the ice plains until I found a civilization like this one. So what do I do next? I want to explore more, experience more in this world. Kental brought his palm up, spread his fingers, and muttered, "I want to have an adventure," then internally oriented himself toward the elf sanctuary. His eyes gradually blurred, thinking of magic towers and the magnificent capital of the kingdom. Then he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, sunlight streamed into the room from the window. He woke up groggily, sat up, and wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth when he heard a knock at the door. He stepped out to see who it was. Behind the door, the guard captain of the Northern Khan region looked at him, hesitating. "Oh, did I wake you? My apologies." He looked at him in confusion. "Captain of the guard, what's the matter?" The guard captain of the Northern Khan region cleared his throat, then solemnly announced to him, "The Lord wants to meet you in person." He muttered, "Oh, the Lord, huh? then he imagined the Lord's wealth and luxury. The Lord is the ruler of this land, the master of this entire territory. A figure like that wants to meet me. Kentel's face was full of confusion. That's clearly fine. Kentel looked at the guard captain of the Northern Khan region and notified him, "Can we go now? Let me change my clothes and I'll follow you." While the captain stood frozen on the spot, wondering, did I come to the right place? Why was it so easy to invite him? Afterward, on the bustling street at the market where people were trading, Kentel thought to himself, when I entered this territory, it was already pitch black, so I only took a quick glance. Kentel's eyes sparkled. He followed the guard captain of the Northern Khan region, looking around, and was truly amazed to see it during the day. He smiled, his expression full of admiration, and gave him a thumbs up. If this is the type of fantasy world, I am always ready to embrace it with many surprises. The guard captain of the Northern Khan region's face went white, filled with confusion. What's wrong with that guy? Afterward, he furrowed his brow, shouting in his heart, there isn't much time left. I must return as soon as possible. Immediately after, there was an announcement. My lord, I have brought the barbarian to meet you. Upon hearing this, the lord turned around and commanded, let him in. The great hall was quickly opened. He looked inside and saw his hand reaching out with full sincerity. A pleasure to meet you, human. The lord stood before the window, hands behind his back, the other hand extended politely. I am Luke Bakken, lord of this land. Let me reintroduce myself, Luke Bakken, lord of the Barkan territory, Genhen Kingdom. He reached out and took his hand. A great honor to meet you, the legitimate lord of the Barkan land. Afterward he bowed, closed his eyes. I am Kentel, a barbarian. He widened his eyes at the barbarian's polite handshake, his expression terrified. While his hand was still shaking, his one hand gripping his wrist, bowing respectfully. He wondered, a barbarian is shaking hands. He only thought about his coldness in his imagination and calmed down slightly. Barbarians have probably never shaken hands with anyone before. For them, strength is everything, no exceptions. HMPH, looks like I've lived long enough to witness these scenes. He cleared his throat to regain his composure. You seem to have grasped a few basic manners. Sit down. On this side, he sat on the throne, while he sat on the opposite side of the tea table. The space inside was both silent and luxuriant. Kentel glanced around for a moment. So this is what a lord's castle looks like. His eyes lit up. Even in a fantasy world, castles still look exactly like the Middle Ages. In front of him was the knight beside Luke. He stood solemnly, arm behind his waist. Is that a knight protecting the lord? His gaze was full of curiosity and admiration, hands on the table clenching excitedly like a child starring. When I was little, I used to love playing role-playing games as a knight. Never imagined I'd see one in real life. He looks so imposing, so wonderful. He is exactly as I once dreamed. He also noticed his gaze. The face of the knight beside Luke crinkled, slightly surprised. Killing intent. It was indeed real killing intent, unmistakable. He dares to emit this powerful, imposing killing intent right in front of the Lord. To him, he seemed to be radiating lethal pressure. Immediately after, the knight beside Luke reached for the sword at his waist. You fool, you won't be able to leave this place in one piece. Suddenly, Luke spoke up. The reason I invited you here is simple. He paused, his expression full of probing. I just want to verify a few things about you. He also calmly folded his arms, looking at him. Sure, it's your decision. What do you want to verify about me? Next he questioned, where are you from? Kentel closed his eyes and recalled the mountain region covered in snow all year round. HMPH, so that's what you care about. I come from the coldest place on this continent, a land buried in white snow. Hearing this, both were startled in surprise. Eternal frozen snow. He stared at him while he kept his arms crossed, eyes closed, reflecting. He truly is the legendary barbarian warrior, and now he is standing right in front of me. Afterward, Luke looked down, suspicious. What you say is hard to believe. He folded his arms and sighed. That is a harsh place, believe it or not, it's up to you. His voice echoed again in the room. Then let me ask you another question. His gaze was sharp, looking at him to probe. How powerful are you? Luke imagined the scene of him dominating madly. The problem is his strength truly as terrifying as the rumors say? Hearing this, Kentel retorted, your question is wrong. I don't know what the standard of strength is like here, so I don't know the answer. he replied. I see. Afterward, he glanced toward the knight standing beside him. He nodded slightly in silent agreement. Luke then offered, then, would you like to have a sparring match with one of my knights? If you accept, I will ensure you receive a worthy reward. Kental was slightly surprised. A sparring match. He added, of course, it will not be a fight to the death. I trust you can control your strength. Hearing that, Kental smiled. I'm interested. His excited tone caught the other two off guard. A duel against a lord's knight. Kental mentally pictured knights from fairy tales, not just ordinary knights but those from a fantasy world. Possessed of magic and auras, this was a chance to witness the true combat prowess of such a knight. Kental rested his chin on his hand, smiling with pure delight. I'm really looking forward to this. Luke gripped the armrest tightly, staring toward Kental. While Kental was exuding a killing intent, Luke thought to himself, as expected, a savage is still a savage. No matter how polite and elegant he may seem, that wild nature, the hunger for battle, and the passion for conflict never change. Kental's excitement took both of them by surprise. Up in the arena, Luke sat in his chair observing. Down on the field stood the knight, alongside Luke and Kental. The knight glared at Kental, while Kental just smiled excitedly. Luke reminded them, let's begin. I hope no one bleeds here. A bell quickly chimed. The knight beside Luke drew his sword, keeping a cautious eye on Kental. Consider it a privilege to witness my swordsmanship. Seeing this, Kental just smiled back. I'm really looking forward to this fight too. The knight gritted his teeth in anger. How dare he be so relaxed while fighting me? The knight lowered his stance, preparing to lunge. I'll show you the difference in skill between us. His eyes flared intensely, his sword aura expanding. Kental still looked on calmly as the knight charged. In the next moment, the tip of the blade split into three at blinding speed. Kental's eyes widened, as three sword points stabbed toward him simultaneously. An illusion. No, it was absolutely not an illusion. Kental effortlessly dodged each strike one by one. All three blades were real. This was his opponent's sword technique. While observing, Kental confirmed to himself, it really is. The knight gritted his teeth smugly. You'll have to struggle quite a bit to avoid my blade. HMPH, holding your own against me this long is already commendable. The strikes became increasingly rapid, but this fight didn't need to go on any longer. Suddenly, Kental raised a hand and flicked his fingers lightly. Crack, the sword shattered into many pieces. The knight's eyes widened in panic. What just happened? Kental placed his hand on the knight's chest. The armor and the remaining piece of the sword shattered instantly. He grabbed the armor, crushing it, and threw the knight forcefully backward. He went flying and fell unconscious. Above, Luke shouted in panic, "Wah, what was that?" The knight lay motionless in the corner of the wall, leaving a long skid mark on the ground. Luke stared in fear and shock. Just one punch, and a grade 1 knight was taken down. What kind of terrifying power is this? Kental turned around, smiled and asked, so is the battle over? Luke stood up abruptly, looking like a ghost who had lost his soul. He narrowed his eyes. Indeed. In his mind, he replayed the moment Kental threw the knight aside so casually. A savage capable of defeating a grade 1 knight with a single punch. That was the power of a monster. He had at least reached the transcendental level. But that was only the minimum level of power he had revealed. His true, profound strength was still immeasurable. Luke flopped back into his chair. A savage possessing such power, he could turn this entire continent upside down. He thought of that hero and his dragon. If that was the case, this needed to be reported to that person, one of the very few who held the title of Sword Saint on this continent. Luke lowered his head and muttered, "It's time for him to come out. I wonder if he'll be interested when he learns about a savage like this." Suddenly, a voice rang out, "Are you talking about me?" Luke jumped and looked up. The window was wide open, the wind blowing the curtains. A figure stood there with arms crossed, looking relaxed. Luke sighed and rolled his eyes. "Your hobbies are as strange as ever." The man laughed teasingly. "Ha, who doesn't need a little fun and games now and then?" Afterward, he crossed his arms, his face turning serious. "So why don't you share that fascinating story with me?" It was the Sword Saint Can. Luke stood up and bowed. "It is an honor to have you here. Even though I reported this quite suddenly, please allow me to present the great Sword Saint, Master Can." Ken smiled, his eyes sharp. Luke remained bowed in respect. In the knight's room, he lay on the bed, his hand on his forehead. The door opened and Luke walked in to check on him, making him jump. "Has your body recovered yet?" The knight hurriedly sat up in panic. "I will be fully recovered in a few days. Please forgive me, sir." Ken walked in behind him. "You're the one who should be apologizing to me." He wrapped his arms behind his back. "My foolish disciple, losing to a nameless savage." Ken's gaze stopped at the torn armor on the knight's chest. There wasn't a single small scratch on his body. Internally, he became even more eager about Kental. The armor was shattered like that, yet the body remained uninjured. Could he have held back on purpose? Ken said in a deep voice, "He is no ordinary, ignorant savage. He has incredibly precise control over his power." The knight stammered, I understand." Ken continued, his eyes cold. "He far exceeds the level of a knight. He could even fight while holding back as if it were a joke. He has reached at least the transcendental level." Hearing this, both Luke and the knight were stunned. Luke muttered, looking at Ken suspiciously, "Please forgive my rudeness. But compared to you, how does he compare, Sword Saint Ken?" The old man turned his head to confirm, "He is quite strong, but I am the Sword Saint. Even with his transcendental level power, he still cannot touch me." Luke looked a bit confused. "I see." Ken remained deep in thought. But I didn't see him use any aura while fighting, did I? And yet, his power has already reached this level." That comment left Luke surprised as well. That's unthinkable by normal standards. Is this the power of a savage from the ice wasteland? Hearing this, Ken lowered his face, recalling the scene of Kental back in the ice wasteland. "I couldn't believe it at first either, but it seems he really is from the ice wasteland." Suddenly, Ken raised his head. A savage from the ice wasteland. He thought of Kental living coldly amidst the snowstorms, the legend of a survivor from the ice wasteland. Is he human? Or, he touched his beard cautiously, or is he a mutant? Images of aggressive snakes and snow bears flashed through his mind. But he dismissed the idea. Probably not. Luke beside him was confused. Ken thought back to the demons and the aggressive white serpent, then concluded. If he were truly a mutant, he wouldn't have been as lenient with you as he was. He remained skeptical about Kental's appearance. "I was wrong, but he came from the ice wasteland. Why that place and why now?" Ken fell into confusing thoughts while Luke, standing beside him, didn't know what was going on. "Is something wrong, Sword Saint?" The old man raised his head. "Nothing, let's leave that for later. His Majesty the Emperor is also curious." He remembered the soldiers heading into the snowy mountains, always demanding the strangest things. Ken turned his head away and instructed, "No need to worry about that for now." Luke nodded, "I understand." He asked further, "Is that savage still in this land?" Luke quickly answered, "Yes, he said he would stay here for a while, so he certainly is." Hearing this, Ken turned and left, his face serious and full of curiosity. "I must verify his strength for myself." The next morning, the sun shone brilliantly down on the White Castle. The North Hand Border Guard captain asked, "What are you planning for your next step?" He stared at Kental, waiting. Kental hesitated, with a bag of gold coins just placed on the table before him. "This is the reward for the recent battle," he said, closing his eyes and announcing, "From now on, I will no longer interfere with your actions in this territory." Kental rested his chin on his hand and thought, "I don't have a clear plan, but it would be better if I could verify my identity here. Having to conquer a dungeon every time I step into a new territory is really a hassle." The North Hand Border Guard captain offered a suggestion. "If you're worried about that, there is a way. You can find someone of high status to stand as your guarantor and verify your identity. Or," he paused, making Kental curious, "or what?" he continued, "you can become a mercenary." He closed his eyes, thought, and explained. "If you accumulate enough achievements and are recognized by the Mercenary Guild, your identity will also be accepted." Internally, the North Hand Border Guard captain also calculated. However, mercenaries are just people who do trivial jobs. Unless they reach a certain rank, it's hard to get their identity verified. But with this savage's power, finding a guarantor will be the easiest option for now. Kental muttered, "Mercenary." His eyes sparkled with curiosity. Is there such a way? In his mind, an image of a cool, fighting mercenary emerged, and he drifted into a daydream. Mercenaries are people who specialize in completing monster extermination missions and supporting merchant caravans. They are symbols of a romantic fantasy world. If that was the case, Kental smiled excitedly. "Where do I go to become a mercenary?" The North Hand Border Guard captain looked at him in surprise. Well, there is a guild in the city." Kental's face was full of excitement, his eyes sparkling. "Take me there." The man looked at Kental blankly. "All right then." Explanation about mercenaries. Mercenaries are people who wander around to complete assigned tasks. Some consider them symbols of romantic freedom, but in reality, mercenaries are the lowest class in society. intended for those whose identities haven't been verified. They are often attacked by monsters in dungeons. Even powerful mercenaries often lose their lives in unexplored dungeons, or they are just people sacrificed for dirty work. That's why low-class mercenaries are often vulgar, dirty, and noisy. Currently in the guild hall, a man in blue angrily punched a man in brown. "You jerk, you dare to touch me." The man in brown tumbled onto the table, then jumped up and cursed, "Wanna start something?" The man in blue roared, "If you're so brave, come on in." Others standing around cheered, "Hey, the guy on the right, I'm betting on you. Try to win. I'm betting on the guy on the left." They lunged at each other, pulling hair and throwing punches. Beside her, the girl with pink hair adjusted her documents and glanced over. "So, how are the new recruits this time?" Ra sighed in frustration, He nothing special, just a bunch of weirdos." This was Rosa, the receptionist of the Mercenary Guild. She recalled Alexandro. There was a lunatic who claimed to be a holy knight, then she thought of Cassin and another talented thief as well. Finally, there was H, the priestess, who wasn't stable at all, and the god she served didn't seem reliable either. The pink-haired girl, seeing Rosa like that, also hesitated. "Oh, is that so? That's a shame." She lowered her head, troubled in her heart. HMPH, no one decent ever appears. These uneducated mercenaries do nothing but fight all day long. In her mind, the image of a handsome blonde prince reaching out his hands toward her appeared. If only a prince on a white horse would appear, stand by my side, and help with this reception work, how wonderful that would be. At the door, someone stepped inside. Rosa looked up, eyes wide with shock upon seeing Kental. He walked in, smiling as he looked around. So this is the Mercenary Guild. The two who were fighting also turned to look amazed. No way, a barbarian. The rest of the crowd also dropped their jaws in astonishment at him. Seeing everyone staring at him, Kental was slightly bewildered, then folded his arms and sat before the desk, smiling. "I came here because I want to become a mercenary." Opposite him, Rosa clutched her documents with trembling hands, tense. Sir, do you really want to become a mercenary? May I ask what your purpose is?" He calmly replied, "There are many reasons, but I heard that becoming a mercenary can help get one's identity recognized in this kingdom." She awkwardly explained, "That is true, but to get your identity recognized through the mercenary path, you will need to achieve quite a few accomplishments." "Is that all right?" Kental confirmed. "No problem." She typed skillfully on the typewriter. "Then I will register you as an F-rank mercenary for a fee of 5 silver coins. Could you tell me your name and age?" He placed the money on the table. "I am Kental, and as for my age, I'm not entirely sure." She pressed the keys skillfully. "Then I will record an approximate number." Finally, Rosa handed him a card from a wooden box. "All done, your mercenary registration is complete. This is your mercenary badge. It is a sign of recognition, so don't lose it." He stared intently at the card, and then grabbed it with great joy. "I've been accepted." Afterward, he looked up at Rosa with an incredibly innocent expression. "Are there any missions available right now? I want to start working on a mission immediately." She stammered. "Miss, mission you say? That's right." She pushed a paper toward Kental. "Currently, these are the missions you are eligible to accept." He picked up the stack of papers on the table and flipped through them. "Wait, these are all just low-level missions." Contents on the mission board, rank F-. Missions: pick medicinal herbs, clean the basement, clean the sewers, sweep the streets, night patrol. Rosa's face broke into a cold sweat as she tried to force a smile. "Because you are currently an F-rank mercenary, these are the missions suitable for you." Deep down, she was terrified. Barbarians are usually very arrogant. What if he suddenly loses his temper? Should I call for backup? She closed her eyes tightly and explained awkwardly, If you complete these simple missions and accumulate accomplishments, you will be able to receive harder missions later." He replied, "I choose this mission." She opened her eyes, regaining her composure. Looking down at the paper he pointed to, "Sir, are you sure?" He folded his arms and asked back, "This is also work that needs to be done, right?" She hesitated. "Yes, I understand." Kental smiled and asked, "So, where are the medicinal herbs that need to be picked located?" Rosa produced a photo showing the shape of the plant. You have to go outside the village into the forest. They look like this." He excitedly grabbed the photo and left. "Understood, I'll be back soon," she replied awkwardly. Yes. Kental turned and left, his eyes still fixed on the photo. Behind him, Rosa watched him go, bewildered. Why does he look so calm? He stepped out the door and left. While inside, the pink-haired girl's limbs went weak, and Rosa stood frozen in panic. In the darkness of a certain forest, on the ground lay the flowers Kentel needed to find. He compared the photo to the flower and whispered to himself, does this herb have wound healing properties? It looks quite strange, doesn't it? Afterward, he took off his coat and threw it on the ground, put his hat on, then smiled and flexed his biceps. I've already prepared clothing to protect against the sun's UV rays, he said to himself. Time to start my first mercenary mission. UV rays are harmful in other worlds too, a little-known fact from Kentel. About an hour later at the Mercenary Guild, a sack of medicinal herbs was placed on the table to Rosa's amazement. He looked at her innocently. Is this enough? She stammered, that's too much. She wondered in her heart, is he planning to destroy the entire field of herbs or what? Looking at the pile of herbs in the bag, Rosa was even more astonished. The quality is very good. Most mercenaries just pick them carelessly, causing the herbs to lose much of their value. Kentel shyly reached up and sniffed. Don't look at it like that, I'm quite meticulous when picking them. She hesitated, that's right. Then she handed over a silver coin. Thank you for working so carefully, Kentel, this is the reward for the mission. A silver coin, an amount only enough to buy the cheapest meal. Even so, this was the first money I've earned from a proper job. Kentel remembered the time he was seriously picking herbs, smiling to himself. Feeling truly moved, he excitedly grabbed the silver coin and stood up. I am very satisfied with this. Could you assign me the next mission right away? Rosa was bewildered. She widened her eyes in confusion. What is this? He's satisfied with a reward like that, this barbarian. While Kentel happily and appreciatively looked at the silver coin in his hand, the sun is still up, so I want to get as much work done as possible. She felt confused in her heart. Why is he so happy? With tears threatening to fall, Rosa shouted in her heart, oh my god, this mercenary is just as strange as the rest. Kentel pointed to the warehouse cleaning task on the F-rank mission list. Let's pick this one. Rosa was confused. After the herb picking incident, this is already the third time you're picking a cleaning job. Seeing Kentel still looking up excitedly, Rosa's suspicion grew. Does a berserker actually like cleaning? Rosa said stiffly, then I'll assign this mission to you. Kentel's footsteps echoed. Hearing the footsteps, the blue-eyed woman glanced at the bear-sized Kentel as he walked in. I'm here to clean the warehouse. The brown-haired woman with a ponytail froze. Kentel asked in a friendly manner, are you the owner of this warehouse? She startled and regained her composure. Why yes. She thought to herself, a barbarian? The warehouse cleaning was simple. Moving items in the warehouse faced no obstacles at all. With his immense strength, he easily carried a large stack of goods to the amazement of the brown-haired woman. The next mission was to sweep the streets. Kentel held a broom and started sweeping the road. At first, it was a bit hard to control his strength, but he handled it well. At that moment, Kentel swept so hard that dust flew up, filling the space with haze. Kentel's work was being followed by someone. Seeing him acting so normally, Ken exclaimed, why is he like that? Ken thought to himself, clearly he is at least a mid-level mercenary with enough determination he could influence an entire kingdom. Just by showing his strength, he would be respected wherever he goes. And yet, a barbarian who always solves problems with force is now sweeping the streets. Moreover, he's not doing it half-heartedly but with such seriousness. At this moment, Kentel was happily sweeping dust into the dustpan. Ken doubted reality, thinking, is Kentel actually enjoying this work? What the hell is he doing? Harmonious light shone down, highlighting the lush green of the leaves and a pair of sparrows. Kentel woke up, stretched his arms out, emitting a comfortable sound. He placed his feet on the wooden floor, looked at the nightstand, saw the bag of money, and jumped up. He stared intently at the bag, recalling. That bag of coins was placed on a tray and pushed toward me. Rosa said, you've worked hard from your very first day as a mercenary, Kentel. This is the reward for a total of 15 missions. In his silver-white eyes and on his face, excitement and happiness were clearly visible. Rosa said reluctantly, it's 15 silver coins. Even so, Kentel was not disappointed in the slightest and remained full of excitement. Thanks, then I'll be back tomorrow. Ending the flashback, Kentel smiled involuntarily and said to himself, let's start the second day in the civilized world. A cute little brown-haired girl hugged the woman's leg and cried incessantly. The other adults all widened their eyes in surprise. Kentel calmly walked as everyone watched him. Suddenly he stopped, questioning what's that over there. He looked toward a large two-story building, curious. A library. The door was pushed open. The small copper bell hanging on the door rang ling-a-ling. The librarian, her hair tied up neatly, greeted him politely. welcome. But she hadn't even finished half a sentence before she shrieked in horror at Kentel's massive frame. He asked politely, "Can I read a little bit of books?" That embarrassing incident passed, and Kentel finally managed to borrow some books. He excitedly picked up a book only the size of his palm and read it carefully. The librarian saw this scene and could only remain silent, unable to speak. Outside, Ken hid and watched, thinking incredulously, a barbarian reading books? Although I can't see clearly, my intuition tells me I'm sure. A manji usually considered ignorant is reading books. Could it be that the manji from this icy region is completely different from the barbarians usually seen? Looking at the excitement on Kentel's face, I wonder, or maybe that guy is an exception. Kentel closed the history book he was reading and whispered, "In the end, the Empire won." He recalled the blue-haired girl from before, thinking, "A few years ago, Mina came to the snowy region and said she would go to the kingdom at war with the Empire to sell weapons. It seems the outcome of that war was the Empire's victory." Kentel pondered, "The current Empire seems to be in a position of overwhelming strength. The kingdom of Barkin has also almost become a vassal. The Empire has swallowed half the human world and is still expanding, full of aggression. It's as if they are swallowing this whole world." He muttered, "Conquering the world, huh?" Immediately after, Kentel brushed those thoughts aside, full of excitement again. "Enough, that's enough about humanity. Now what I really want to learn is..." He looked at another book and said, "It's about non-human races." Kentel thought happily, a book recording non-human species, fantasy races that truly exist in this world. The greatest cave in the world, where rare ores are scattered like trash, Mantomia, the dwarves' mining cave. Biseraphia, the village of the small fairy race. Reiki Pyria, the flying city of the celestial race. And there's the forbidden holy ground that no one can touch, Elfer Sagrado, the sacred land of the elf race. No one knows its exact location. Many have tried to track it down, but all failed in the end. Kentel muttered, So I have the rare qualification to enter the elf sanctuary." Suddenly he exclaimed in surprise, Afterward he held up the book, surprised. "What? There are other places like the White Snow region. Demon realms do not allow humans to enter. They are places filled with malformed, insane, and twisted creatures. There are many demon realms, but this world contains exactly 5 massive and special ones. The Silent Forest, a place of silence and everlasting fear. The Abyss, a place that plunges the world into a pit of evil. The Deep Sea, where souls still breathe and live. The Hollow, a place where nothing exists. And finally, the White Snow region. Within the demon realm exist terrifying creatures called mutants. However, the existence of demon realms cannot spill over into the human world." Kentel finished reading and wondered, how vast is this world anyway? The White Snow region alone is already vast, and yet there are so many other places too. He stood up and said, "For now, the data here is probably only this much." His actions startled the librarian. Kentel told her, "Thanks to this, I've verified enough, thank you." The librarian replied, trembling with fear, "Yes, yes." Kentel left happily, opening the door. He went to the mercenary guild and asked Rosa, "Are there any missions today?" She startled, "Kentel, you're here." Rosa handed over the list. "Here is the mission board." Kentel's face was as joyful as a squirrel finding a nut. Ken hid on the side, incredulous. This is truly strange. Finally, he became determined. "It seems I have to meet him personally." After a long period of secret surveillance, the Sword Saint Ken finally made a new move. At this time, the moon had risen high in the sky, and the street was deserted. Kentel walked down the road while humming contentedly. "Today I've solved over 10 commissions. Even with just minor tasks, managing to make this much income is quite decent. If I keep this pace, the day I'm recognized as a true mercenary probably isn't far off." As he walked along, whistling and humming, someone hidden behind a wall followed him. Seeing Kentel approach, the person stepped out to his surprise. It was none other than the Sword Saint Can. The two stood facing each other for a long time. Kentel spoke first. "You're the one who's been following me all day today." Ken heard this and exclaimed in shock in his heart, "What?" He folded his arms and asked further, "What do you want?" Ken was still incredulous. "You realized it already. Clearly, I used magic to hide my presence. No matter how sharp your intuition is, realizing my presence should have been impossible." Suddenly, Kentel nimbly grabbed his money bag tightly and alertly exclaimed, "Could it be a highwayman?" Ken heard that as if struck by lightning. Kentel's gaze was sharp as he affirmed, without responding, "It seems I guessed correctly. Even though security seems good, highwaymen still appear." His eyes went blank as he tried to explain, "No, I am only..." but he wondered in his heart, if I say I'm a sword saint, would he believe it? Kentel exclaimed as if dealing a critical blow, to think that an old man like you has to resort to robbery. It seems the economy really isn't doing well. Ken felt truly and utterly wrong. Kentel pondered, what was that? Afterward his face brightened. This might actually be a good opportunity. He was still bewildered, not understanding what was happening. A moment later, seeing Kentel's foolish expression, Ken thought, he's mistaking me for a robber. A way to gauge this guy's power and true identity is to clash with him directly. Let me see what the power of a legendary savage is really like. Then he began to roll up his sleeves. An aura of vigilance rising. Kentel fell silent, suddenly vanishing from his sight. Ken exclaimed, vanished, what the? Kentel suddenly appeared right in front of him, an arm reaching out, his footsteps moving nimbly. Dodging, Ken thought, if I keep standing still like this, I'm going to get grabbed by the throat. Kentel let out a sudden oh and smirked. Pretty fast, aren't you? He exclaimed, then began to move again. Ken was gripped by panic. No way, I was almost grabbed. If my reflexes had been just a split second slower, I would have been caught. But what's even more shocking is that I can't feel a single trace of mana flow from him at all. Kentel crossed his arms and smiled. This is fun. Ken was still internally stunned. Can he move that fast using nothing but pure physical body strength? This is no longer a test. I'm going to attack with everything I've got. With that thought, he lunged forward. Kentel's expression turned somber, and he suddenly vanished before Ken's eyes. He appeared right behind him, eyes glowing brightly, grabbing the opponent's wrist tightly. Ken broke into a cold sweat, bewildered. What is this? I clearly expanded my sensory range, yet I still couldn't react in time. His hand was twisted backward by Kentel, and he felt not only captured but pinned down as if against solid rock. His entire body lifted by a sheer force of power. Ken gritted his teeth in pain. What kind of monstrous strength is this? That mere physical force is already impossible to resist. Thinking this, he unleashed all his power, releasing an eruption of energy from his body. Kentel was surprised to see this. A stream of blue light radiated from Ken, and after observing intently, he immediately caused a magical explosion to erupt. Ken slid away, breaking free from Kentel's grip. Kentel looked down at his own hand, while Ken, standing opposite, stared fixedly at him. Suddenly, Kentel nonchalantly let out a remark. So, even highwaymen nowadays have some decent skills. The old man felt helpless internally. Why are you so insistent on calling me a robber? Then Ken assessed him seriously. A rare form of mana manifestation that only those who reach the transcendental realm can achieve. Yet he covers his whole body with it. Why would someone like that do something as trivial as robbery? But Kentel genuinely believed it was a thief's skill. Ken continued to ponder. By reflex, he manifested mana. The mana took shape and could even tear through hardened steel. A human body that touched it should have been crushed, yet he doesn't have a single scratch on him. What kind of monstrous physique is that? To withstand manifested mana with nothing but bare skin? While he was deep in thought, Kentel spoke up. You really look like you're using something strange. It must be time to finish this. Hearing that, Ken reached for the hilt of his sword at his waist. Suddenly his gaze froze. Kentel suddenly appeared, touching a finger to the hilt of his sword and smiling. He used a move that looked so gentle, his innocent expression leaving Ken startled, eyes wide, mouth agape. Afterward, he gritted his teeth and used all his might to draw the sword, only to receive a trembling hand in response. Ken was once again bewildered. At this moment, Kentel's eyes sparkled as if he'd found prey. Internally, he screamed frantically, is this the end? A large hand reached out, but suddenly Kentel just sighed. So this is what being robbed in a fantasy world is like. Saying that, he hoisted Ken, who had by now fainted, onto his shoulder. The North Hand border guard captain was panicked, frozen at the sight. Oh my god, what is going on? Kentel is carrying Master Ken so gently. What kind of weird thing is happening here? Why would the sword saint can appear in a place like this? He lay still in a sack while the captain was horrified. Don't tell me that savage dared to attack Master Ken. Now what are we supposed to do? Suddenly, Kentel spoke up. I just caught a robber. Hearing this, the captain widened his eyes, jaw dropping. A robber. Kentel, while hoisting him, smiled radiantly. If I turn him over to the guards, it'll be added to my mercenary achievements, right? The North Hand guard captain stood stunned, looking blank for a long time. Regaining his composure, he asked gently, what on earth is this situation? Someone who reached the peak of transcendental skill like the sword saint can. That great man was being held captive by a savage in such an incredibly shameful and humiliating position. That person is not a robber. Kentel's expression began to shift, becoming serious. You know him, turns out you're accomplices. The North Hand border guard captain stood at attention, saluting politely. The only sword saint of the Genhensher kingdom, I offer my respects to the sword saint Kan. Hearing this, Kental looked down at the person he was carrying. What? Kental looked at him in shock. A sword saint, a title so noble yet he's called a robber. He said in a stern voice, no way, this old man really is a robber. He attacked me to rob me of a few silver coins. The captain looked Kental straight in the eye, countering, no, he really is the sword saint, I couldn't mistake that face. Unable to believe the truth, Kental thought quickly, maybe he's a mage who uses magic. The captain shook his head, closing his eyes to explain. If he were a mage that powerful, he would have been honored as a sword saint already. Kental couldn't accept the reality, or maybe sword saint is just a fancy name for robbers. He felt helpless. What kind of nonsense am I spouting? The exchange continued. So he really is a sword saint? Yes. Kental looked at him in amazement. I will report this to the Lord. A moment later, the Lord slammed the table in anger. What Master Kan is missing? Kental bowed his head to show respect to the people here. I apologize, I should have let him explain. Face to face with Kental, he replied, no, it's my fault for not saying anything. The two sat lost in thought, one large, one small. When the Lord entered the room, he was panicked by the scene before him. What the hell is going on? I thought Master Kan would challenge that savage, but I never expected him to lose. Master Kan pondered. Master Kan was defeated by that savage. I don't know the details, but that is the truth. He looked toward Kental and a thought flashed. That means that Savage is even stronger than the Sword Saint. Then he turned his gaze back to Kan. Of course, even within the transcendental ranks there are different levels. Master can only received the title of Sword Saint recently, so perhaps he is still at a lower level. But regardless, a Sword Saint is someone who has reached the noble rank of Sword Master, and that Savage took down such a person. He looked at Kental, imagining an even more terrifying figure which made him completely uncontrollable. At that moment, the Lord was so terrified that sweat flowed down his face, his head aching. Afterward, he gave advice. It seems there's a misunderstanding here, so I ask for permission to withdraw. You two should talk it out clearly. Saying that, he left the room, and so the two sat in total silence. Kental looked at Kan as if wanting to say something, while Kan trembled, sipping the tea in his hand, thinking to himself, how embarrassing. Still, I cannot deny it, that was a complete failure. My pride was not only wounded but completely shattered. Setting the teacup down, Kan placed his hand over his chest and held his head high. Let me introduce myself officially. I am the Sword Saint Kan. Kental asked, is Sword Saint your last name? He replied gently. When one has reached the realm of the Sword Saint, a human's given name and surname become void. Kental asked again, I understand. So what you just displayed is the skill of a sword saint, right? His eyes suddenly recalled something. Then from his hand, a green magical light emerged. Do you mean this? Kental's eyes widened, showing interest in this special magic. Oh. He recalled the scene when he swung his magic. At first, I thought it was just a robber's trick, so I didn't care. But now that I know it's a sword saint's skill, I'm starting to get interested. Master Kan immediately explained further. This is the manifestation of what is called aura. Kental asked in surprise, aura? He looked at the magic in his palm, his eyes filled with pride, his cheeks flushing. So that was aura. Unable to contain his excitement, Kental stood up, his eyes sparkling. How can I learn it? He looked down at his palm. Basically, you have to control your mana and manifest it outward. Kental asked again, so is it similar to mana? He began to explain. Sina is the name referring to the essence of arcane power. When you use it as aura, you are a swordsman. When you use it as mana, you are a mage. Kental smiled, so both swordsmen and mages use the same type of energy called Sina. Would you be willing to teach me that skill? He stood up, his voice clear but honest. It's embarrassing to admit, but I'm still learning and haven't truly mastered this technique. Kental's serious face made him hesitate, but then he replied, very well. Kan asked seriously, but do you really need my guidance? Aren't you stronger than me? Kental sat down, crossing his arms over his chest. I don't know anything about swordsmanship. Actually, I just swing my sword wildly. He asked in surprise. Really? Kan thought about the image he had just explained, which made Kental admire him. Yes, I am a sword saint, a user of the sword. All right, I will teach him the way of the sword and show him its greatness. I will reclaim my pride. Suppressing the thought, he quickly agreed. Fine, I am a sword saint, a master of the blade. Without a sword, I am merely a half measure. Suddenly, Kental blurted out, I thought as much. No wonder you're so weak, it's because you aren't using a sword. Can was stunned, that's true. Kental crossed his arms over his chest and continued. I mean, being called a sword saint but having so little power, I thought something was wrong. He retorted angrily, you brat. Kental added, if you had used a sword, perhaps you would have won. Can was dissatisfied, wondering if he could defeat Kental just by using a sword. Kental became excited again. I'm really looking forward to this. Conversely, Ken felt dejected. My pride, will I be able to reclaim it? I feel like I'm going to be crushed even more miserably. Before regressing, I used to practice sword techniques. But this is the true arcane swordsmanship, a miraculous sword style that utilizes mysterious aura. This is arcane swordsmanship. In the practice yard, the sword Saint Can, with a serious expression, held his sword in one hand, standing sideways to instruct. The most prominent feature of my sword technique is the combination of illusion and reality. When you faced my disciple, what did you see? Kental recalled the night alongside the Lord, pondered for a moment, and answered honestly. His sword technique split into 3, and all 3 were actual attacks. Kental keenly realized, oh, so that's what you meant when you talked about a combination. He asked, is that a technique based more on skill than power? Ken confirmed, exactly. Sword technique is the art of blending swordsmanship with arcane arts, and whoever reaches the peak of that path becomes a sword saint. Saying that, he delivered a sword strike, and from the cushion, streams of vibrant green life force began to surge. As the sunlight hit it, the aura looked vivid and intense, covering and dancing on each sword blade. Kental admired it, his eyes sparkling. Oh, so that's aura, the sword saint Ken replied stiffly. Yes. He closed his eyes, feeling a bit restless inside. I still find it hard to believe this is happening. Ken cleared his throat, raised his other hand to grip the sword hilt and said, talking about the combination of illusion and reality sounds a bit abstract. Internally, I am truly teaching swordsmanship to a savage. Externally, he kept his composure, holding the sword out under his shoulder, his tone serious. So, I will let you experience it directly. Finishing his words, his gaze suddenly became sharp. He lowered his body and unleashed a sword strike, the sword intent curving miraculously. The tip of the blade striking forcefully, causing the floor to break into a deep mark. From that position, the aura split into 5 lines carrying sword intent that shot away. Kental was shaken, your sword technique. Seeing the sword intent clearly split into 5 paths only to converge at a single target, he admired it, unable to believe. Split into 5 parts. The dust quickly cleared, revealing a concave hole right on the wall. The sword saint calmly said, there are many techniques that create illusions with aura, but only my sword technique can turn those illusions into reality. Kental was dazed. The technique you just performed. Before he could finish, he puffed out his chest with pride. Yes, that was an arcane masterpiece. What do you think? Kental replied bluntly, I think I can do it too. Can was shocked to the point of rigidity by this naivety. The sword saint asked aggressively, what are you talking about? He thought indignantly, I've dedicated my whole life to the way of the sword, combining innate talent with constant training, and it was so hard to reach this achievement. How can a savage learn it just by looking at it once? Kental confidently, I'll show you. Ken looked at him startled, is that an axe? Kental smiled brilliantly, carrying a large axe on his shoulder. With wide steps, lowering his body, sweeping the axe back and taking control with speed. In 1 second, he unleashed dozens of axe strikes. Ken's eyes widened, that sword technique. He watched in shock as Kental swung wildly, using only raw power and overwhelming speed. On the final strike, Kental accumulated killing intent, splitting it into 5 branches, all lunging forward, focusing all his power on a single point. Bang! A loud explosion, the wall shattered into flames. The sword saint was terrified and shocked. The axe landed beside Kental's feet, still emitting faint smoke. Kental casually carried the axe, turned, and asked with a smile, it's done, what do you think? Ken rolled his eyes, reminiscing. It looked like a combination of illusion and reality when he attacked, but it was really just relying on overwhelming power and speed. Even I was almost fooled for a moment. He commented sternly, you just swung the axe with raw power, there was no technique at all. But Kental replied with his own reasoning, but the result was no different, right? Sword technique is meant for real combat. As long as the result is the same, is that enough? He asked point blank, leaving the sword saint confused and stammering. Outwardly, he maintained a calm appearance, but inside he was like a vast ocean of tears with a subtle drop of emotion welling up at the corner of his eye. He's not wrong, but he hurt my pride too much. Ken gritted his teeth. In that case, how about this? Afterward, he swung his sword again. This time, his figure split into multiple illusions, recklessly unleashing attacks, his whole body enveloped in a deep, dark aura with countless slashes raining down. Kentaro was astonished. Your body, did it split apart? His sword, intense sword, accumulating more and more until it transformed into a gigantic magical sphere. When it could no longer hold any more sword intent, the sphere exploded, the shockwave causing earth and stone to shatter and scatter. After everything settled, the spot where the sword saint stood was nothing more than the center of a massive crater, at least 6 or 7 meters in radius. Ken breathed heavily, calmly saying, "This is a cloning technique achieved through the ultimate realm of aura usage." He wiped the sweat from under his chin, cautiously asking, "Can you imitate this?" Kental turned his feet, moved silently to one side, his face hardening, naturally looping the axe over his shoulder, his gaze calm. He repeated the old technique, relying on his extreme speed to frantically slash out countless blade intents. Ken's eyes widened in amazement. Kental remained firm in his stance, swinging his axe, each line of killing intent merging into a towering cyclone. Sharp intent swirling and spiraling with him at the center. In a single stroke, the majestic cyclone was dyed deep, dark purple, a chaotic tempest of killing intent. Time passed and Kental's clear voice rang out, "What do you think?" He lifted his chin arrogantly and stepped out. Ken collapsed onto the cracked ground, trembling and weeping silently. My life's work. Amidst the crater of the battlefield, the two faced each other. Kental smiled at him in confusion. Ken, gaunt and tormented, cried out in his mind, "My sword technique!" Truly, there was nothing to say. This was bullying an old man. This young man was living too excessively. Returning to the story, the sword saint wept bitterly, muttering, "Impossible," then wept pitifully. Kental folded his arms and sighed, calmly dropping a line, Your mental fortitude is weaker than I thought." He walked over leisurely, saying, "Your sword technique is truly magical." Gan, who was crying, froze. Kental bowed his head to look at him, speaking bluntly, "I was just swinging my axe fast. That wasn't genuine sword technique. The technique you just used wasn't just illusions, it was true sword technique." Ken listened in a daze while Kental stammered slightly, I cannot reach the true realm of the arcane law." He pursed his lips, thinking arrogantly, "That's right, my sword technique is still valuable. Combining illusion and reality into a definite entity is something only I can do in this world." Ken revived with a flame of determination, clenching his fists and thinking, "That's right, my technique is perfect. That barbarian is just a madman." Ken turned toward him, filled with resentment, thinking, what kind of madman can move so fast he becomes a blur in the air without using aura? That is not something a human can do. Suddenly, Kental asked, "Can you teach me the true meaning of this sword technique?" The sword saint froze, then quickly regained his senses. I apologize, I let my emotions get the better of me. I hope you can understand." "I understand." Ken calmed down, cleared his throat, and began explaining the true technique. "First of all, you must grasp how to control aura." He opened his palm, upon which a deep blue aura flame ignited. He continued, "But to control aura, you must first understand the arcane law. Whether it's a mage, a swordsman, or a wizard, no one can enter a higher realm without first awakening the arcane law. Only those who believe in gods are the exception." Kentaro curiously asked, "So divine power is something different?" The sword saint replied, "Their miracles come directly from the god they worship, having nothing to do with personal ability." He nodded, enlightened. Ken continued, "The arcane law is the potential power within every human. How one uses that power determines everything." Kenta looked at his hand radiating aura, thinking, so, to use aura, absorb mana, or control spirits, the foundation of all mystical power stems from understanding the arcane law. The arcane law has 5 different stages. Ken held up one finger, his face serious. The most basic is sensing the arcane law. It is the realm of recognizing, exploring, and experiencing the arcane law. He asked, "Not everyone can sense the arcane law, right?" Ken nodded, "That is a matter of course. Without talent, one cannot sense it. Those who can sense the arcane law, we call them the 3rd class level." He explained clearly, the ability to use the arcane law is divided into 5 levels. 3rd class is the 1st level. Kental recalled when Milna had explained it to him. Usually we classify them into third class, second class, first class, transcendent, and heroic. That statement matched. Those are the 5 main ranks of the arcane law. Kentaro thought to himself, oh, so that's it. In reality, this is just a classification method for easier understanding. Within the same level, there is still a large gap. The boundaries between those of the same level are not clear-cut. Just grasping this concept is enough. He was serious. I understand what you mean, he responded calmly. Then let's begin. Ken said bluntly, the first step of the arcane law is sensing the arcane law. Try to feel everything around you. Ken shut his eyes and took the lead, prompting Kentaro to close his eyes and focus as well. Receiving the technique was akin to awakening a new, unprecedented sense, so he needed to push his senses to their absolute limit. In his mind, he could hear the rustle of the plants outside, the wind whistling past, the warmth rising from the earth, and every minute movement in the air, including the sunlight above, and amid it all, he had to search for one unique presence. Kentaro sat in meditation, struggling to sense his surrounding. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, the connection severed. I don't see anything at all. Hearing this, Ken looked at him in confusion. The atmosphere became awkward as they stared at each other in bewilderment. Really, is that so? I had assumed that with your ability you would be able to sense it immediately. He pondered how those with potential usually gathered energy easily, though it wasn't a hard rule. Perhaps those strong individuals who lacked magic were actually more receptive to techniques, but maybe this guy was an exception, a true savage. Seeing this, the old man stroked his beard, his expression full of confusion. It must be the White Emperor's foreign matter. In his mind, Kentaro recalled the people back in his home village. I don't know, no one around me has ever felt something called a technique, as people from the wilderness are just like that. Seeing this, the man tried to explain. Actually, most people don't find it easy to grasp techniques either. Let me try channeling energy directly into you to open the path to the technique. Kentaro looked back in confusion, his eyes wide with admiration and excitement. You're going to transfer your internal energy. The old man nodded seriously, looking at him from such a close distance. His face lit up with excitement as he pointed at himself solemnly. All right, I'm mentally prepared. The old man confirmed with some hesitation. Ready, I'm ready. Ken stood up and walked behind Kentaro, his eyes sparkling with anticipation as he warned him while rolling up his sleeves. Now relax your entire body, focus inward, and funnel all your sensations into your physical form. His hand touched Kentaro's back. Receive the magic I am channeling into you. The old man's expression darkened, filled with surprise. His arm went stiff. Is he really human? He imagined Kentaro's body as a solid block of stone. How tightly compressed is this muscle mass? Is he truly just a normal person? Kentaro felt nothing and was equally confused. Ken hurriedly pulled his hand back, startled. My apologies, my mind just wandered off for a second. Then he announced, let's begin. His hand pulsed with energy again, his eyes shut tight with confidence. I will jumpstart your internal energy flow. The key was to awaken the technique pathway within him, which shouldn't have been too difficult to find, while Kentaro focused intensely. Ken froze, his eyes rounded in confusion. What's wrong? His body stiffened while Kentaro hugged his knees and smiled excitedly in anticipation. I can't find the technique pathway in his body, no, more accurately. With an expression of pure disbelief, he shouted internally, I can't even touch it. As Kentaro continued to wait, Ken thought, it's like being submerged in water. No matter how much I expand my internal energy, I can't make contact with anything, as if I'm swimming in an abyss being crushed by the pressure of the deep. Finally, he closed his eyes and gave up. This isn't working. Ken cleared his throat, making Kentaro's eyes go wide with bewilderment. Kentaro looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. What do you mean it's not working? Are you saying I don't have the talent? Ken tried to explain. No, it's not like that. It's just that transferring internal energy into you isn't enough to locate the technique. He thought about the energy stifled within Kentaro's body. You have to find the pathway from within yourself and awaken your dormant power. Kentaro sat on the ground looking at him. I understand. But Ken said bluntly, I just can't find the path to your technique. He looked wide-eyed and stunned, his face blank with disbelief. Are you saying I can't receive the technique? The old man stood before him and reached out. No, not necessarily. I can't even determine if it exists or not. Ken raised his head. What do you mean? Ken affirmed, your body is wounded. Ken started and looked up. The old man calmly added, to find the technique, internal energy must permeate deep within, but your constitution is too dense. my internal energy simply cannot penetrate deep enough into you. He thought of the energy flow unable to budge a stone pinned to the sea floor. I've never seen this before. Does a pure constitution actually hinder internal energy? Kental also fell into thought and closed his eyes helplessly. Is even a sword saint powerless? His expression sad, he asked, so will I never be able to learn the technique? Ken replied, it's hard to say, I can't confirm it either way. After that, he suggested two paths to Kental. I don't even know if the pathway exists in you. You should find a sword saint more knowledgeable about internal energy or go to the Mage Tower. Next, he placed his hand on his chest and bowed sincerely. Regardless, I apologize. He looked at the old man too. No, it's fine. Kental touched his chin deep in thought. There's still hope, that's enough for today. Then he pushed off his knees and stood up. He smiled optimistically. I've learned a lot over the past few days and I'm very grateful. The old man looked at him, at a loss for words. He recalled those terrifying savages he had encountered before. Every savage I've ever met has been fierce and difficult to control. They were pillagers, drunks, and lived by violence, which was why society shunned them. But this person was different. Ken stared at him intently. Have you ever thought about joining this kingdom? Kental was perplexed. What do you mean? He reached out to explain. I mean swearing loyalty to the kingdom and receiving a title. With this strength, you would rise very high and I am even willing to sponsor you. He clenched his fist. That's an interesting offer. But then he bowed his head. I refuse, I don't want to be tied down. On the other side, Ken had his own schemes. If I could win him over, perhaps I could even escape the Empire's control. Ken looked at him, puzzled. Is a title not attractive enough for you? Is that really not enough? His face darkened. Then he crossed his arms and smiled, stating his ideal to Ken. I choose to enjoy my own freedom. He started and realized. He looked up at him flustered. So, that's it, I understand. Kental looked at him confused, then smiled and reached out in a friendly gesture. Regardless, thank you, I won't forget this favor. Ken's gaze dropped. Inside the hallway, Ken walked alone. He was lost in thought, filled with shame. I'm such a fool. Then he recalled the sight of Kental, thinking he could control him even for a moment, but that was impossible. That savage only acts according to his own ideals. Collaborating with outsiders is something he can do, but it stops there as his inner self holds only his own notions. Then he recalled Kental's cheerful reply, unable to guess what he was thinking. Perhaps that made him even harder to fathom than any other barbarian. A person who came from the land of demons, a savage from the White Emperor. He remembered the barbarians he had met in the snowstorms. Ken muttered, Emperor. He looked up at the moon, wanting to invade the demon realm. What kind of conspiracy are you hatching? In Lu's room, the old man sat at the table with his chin in his hand, perplexed. Really, does the Emperor actually want to conquer the demon world? Ken sat opposite him, arms crossed, dissatisfied. I'm sacrificing myself in the name of scouting, but you still don't believe me, confirming again, are you telling the truth? He bowed his head and sighed with certainty. Of course, perhaps he thinks he is the reincarnation of an ancient emperor, but regardless, that is a matter for later. Ken's expression was serious as he crossed his arms. We haven't even fully secured human territory yet. Lu also looked down, understanding. It's only a matter of time. Lu also looked down, understanding. It's only a matter of time. Then Ken raised his head seriously. Right, this land belongs to the Empire. We could be summoned at any time, so it's best to be ready to respond. Lu replied, many thanks. He wearily leaned back in his chair, secretly thinking that the times were already chaotic, and now that the Emperor was half mad, it was a real headache. Hearing this, Lu was also startled. His gaze became sharp and cold. Could the rumors be true? He calmly confirmed, yes, the demons have started mobilizing their army. He widened his eyes in panic. Then Ken remembered the monsters. The hellish eruptions are also abnormal. I can't confirm it yet, but reports have come in that the demon realm's seal is leaking. Then he mentioned the devils and the white serpent. Whatever is happening, this is a catastrophe for humanity. Suddenly, as if he remembered something, come to think of it, perhaps the most bizarre thing is already among us. Lu also hung his head exactly. On the other side, Ken probed, what do you think? The old man was suspicious. I'm not sure. Then he thought of Huang more optimistically. At least he is not an opponent. But then he thought of Kental's frenzied image. Other than that, I have nothing more to say. The next morning, the sun shone across the city. Kental walked down the street feeling cheerful. Suddenly, he looked toward a woman and a child who were hugging each other and watching him in terror. leaving him confused. He turned his head and saw a man cowering against a wall to avoid him, which only made him more puzzled. He touched his chin, lost in thought. Are they afraid of me because of my clothes? He recalled meeting a couple while standing by a tree and showing off his new shirt, then concluded. Or is it because I'm not wearing fur so I don't look decent? A fur coat would be fine, but I don't look like a gentleman. They must think I'm crazy and don't want any trouble. But it turned out he had misunderstood. He frowned with determination. All right. Kentel clenched his fist, his face excited. I'll go buy some decent clothes. At the shop, clothes were hung on racks. Fabrics were neatly stacked. The door opened with a jingle of bells. The shopkeeper, who was measuring a mannequin, turned to look. Hello. His face turned pale with fear upon seeing Kentel. Opposite him, Kentel stared fixedly, his killer intent radiating unconsciously. I need to buy some clothes. The shopkeeper panicked internally. A savage. The shopkeeper stammered as he looked at him, tears streaming down in fear. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I don't have anything that fits your frame. Hearing this, Kentel crossed his arms, feeling troubled. That's annoying. So there's no other way? The man bowed his head and suggested. If you are willing to wait, our shop takes custom orders. Kentel smiled excitedly and accepted. Oh, is that so? Then do it. The shopkeeper looked up in confusion. Yes, of course, we'll notify you when it's done. In his heart, he imagined Kentel getting angry when the fit wasn't to his liking, being grabbed by the collar and glared at. You call this clothing? His face sank, lost deep in the past. Will I survive this? On his way to the guild, Kentel suddenly noticed something under his feet. What's this? A blue gem. Kentel picked it up and held it to the sunlight, curious. A gem. Inside the gem it sparkled. He narrowed his eyes and exclaimed. Then he put it in his side pouch. All right then, I'll ask the guild. At the trading guild, Kentel asked Ra, do you know what this is? Rosa, the guild receptionist, dazed, took the gem. I picked it up on my way here. Kentel sat opposite, arms crossed, looking not like a regular sphere. Rosa stammered, I understand. She carefully examined the gem. It didn't look like a gemstone. The surface was extremely smooth, as if someone had crafted it. She stared intently at the sparkling blue gem in her hand, her eyes gradually becoming hazy. There was no insignia or title to be found. Why does it give off such a sense of value? Suddenly, the sound of a finger snap brought her back to reality. Rosa startled and snapped awake. She looked up at Kentel blank-faced. He withdrew his hand and asked, Are you all right? She was still dazed. What do you mean? Kentel explained, You looked like the sphere hypnotized you. She was still foggy. Kentel shook his head. Yeah, forget it, just ignore it. Rosa looked awkwardly toward the stone and suggested, Even so, this sphere is very hard to understand. I feel a bizarre energy flowing from it. Do you want me to have an expert appraise it? He smiled and excitedly declined. I appreciate it, but I'll figure it out myself. That's where the fun is. He changed the subject, crossed his arms, and smiled. By the way, is there any work today? She replied quickly. Yes, please wait a moment, let me get the quest board. Rosa placed the quest board and pushed it toward him. Cleaning the streets, clearing the sewers, weeding, digging potatoes. Kentel excitedly grabbed the quest board. That day, a bag of money was placed on the table. Kentel lay back with his hands behind his head, laughing happily. Another glorious day. Then he took the blue gem out to look at it, serious. What on earth is this? He recalled the way Rosa had been captivated by the gem, looking like she was going crazy over it, which left him suspicious. Does it have some kind of power? He widened his eyes. A voice echoed in his mind, making him jump to his feet. The gem emitted a black aura. Find me. Kentel was confused. Why did I just hear a voice from the sphere? Then, undressed, he curiously followed the gem into the night. It kept repeating, find me, making him even more confused. Where was it trying to lead him? He closed his eyes, thinking of the directional arrows appearing in his head. Now it was projecting a map like some kind of control spell. Kentel looked at the gem emitting a black aura in his palm. It urged him, find me. He calmed down and huffed. Then he returned to his room, looking out the window excitedly. All right then, let's go. By a bush, Kentel pulled it aside, the voice still echoing, find me. He sighed. I said I'm coming already, shut up. He stood before a path. He looked up HMPH. Ahead was a pitch-black cave. Is this the place? Kentel smiled. Inside, a skeleton opened its glowing blue eyes, realizing something. The voice echoed again, find me. He wasn't afraid and entered the cave. I'm here, the person behind the voice growled. Amidst the chains, energy tracked him, causing his image to appear. Another sacrifice enters. This time it's a dull savage, at least he's big enough. The gem on the staff glowed brightly. The skeleton grinned smugly, its body emitting a blue light as it decided, "That's enough, 10 living souls." He sat inside a magic circle, one hand holding the staff, the other channeling energy with the sacrificial altar behind him. He wondered, is this really an illusion? Can even resurrection be achieved? Long ago, during a chaotic era when many kingdoms collapsed, a wicked sorcerer stood behind it all. A villain who manipulated emotions, controlled the minds of countless kings, sparked wars, and brought entire realms to their knees. But his ultimate cruelty was eventually exposed, and he was struck down by heroes. However, just before his defeat, he transferred his soul into a living vessel, becoming a Lick. He became a necromancer, an immortal entity that would endure until destroyed. With a savage, wicked laugh, he raised his skeletal hand to cast his spells. Thus, the evil sorcerer who once conquered the world became a Lick and began plotting his own resurrection. His dark magic spread into every corner, and the resurrection ritual required a vast amount of life force. He settled near a remote estate, releasing hypnotic orbs to harvest sacrifices bit by bit. Those orbs acted as the mana cores necessary for the resurrection. The stones emitted a shimmering glow amidst currents of wicked, deadly energy. With immense power, he intended to conquer the world once again, fueled by madness and ambition. That goal was nearly complete. In his deep, gravelly voice, he muttered, "What is a savage doing here?" The peaceful scene of the carpenter's village was filled with abundant vitality. "This is a secluded territory I chose to gather power, a hidden place where the masses wouldn't notice me." That was why the appearance of a savage here was abnormal. Kentel's blurry form was projected into his view. The sorcerer watched the magical flame tracking Kentel, his mind full of wicked schemes. "Those creatures from the north have come quite far, haven't they? Given your size, you'll make an excellent sacrifice. I placed a special effect on the orb. It only hypnotizes those ignorant of the mysteries. Anyone ensnared by the orb here will never grasp the truth." His skeletal hand released the magic orb into the cavern, and he laughed nonchalantly. "Come here, savage, and become a stepping stone for my glorious resurrection ritual." Time passed and the scene shifted. Kentel stood before a massive wooden door which was likely twice his own height. He slowly pushed the door open and stepped inside. Kentel's eyes widened in surprise. The Lick's pitch-black eye sockets flared with light, and his skeletal hand tightened around his staff. The sorcerer stood leisurely on a high platform, having waited for him for a long time. Kentel stared, speechless, and blurted out in astonishment, "It's a real Lick." In his imagination, a Lick wearing black robes and holding a staff looked like a priest from an ancient civilization, the peak state a top-tier sorcerer could achieve, an entity that always appeared in fantasy stories as a villain. "I never expected to meet a real-life Lick." Seeing him standing there like a statue, the sorcerer asked suspiciously, "Who are you? Don't tell me you weren't hypnotized by the orb." Kentel finally snapped out of it and chuckled with realization, "So that's how you trick people into coming here." Beneath his feet lay scattered, bleached white bones. The Lick went silent. The sorcerer was baffled by the situation and pondered, "What is this? I can't sense any mystery from him, which means he's just a common savage." "If that were the case," he said with a sarcastic, rasping voice, "you must be carrying an artifact that protects your mind, a high-level one that I cannot even detect. I don't know how a savage could possess something like that." But the sorcerer's tone turned mocking. "It seems you just got lucky and picked it up somewhere." Kentel retorted, denying it. "I don't have anything like that." The sorcerer didn't believe him and said, "You think you can fool me?" After speaking, he channeled his magical power. The stone atop his staff emitted white, swirling beams of light. They shone down onto the bones scattered on the ground. He continued, "If you had obediently let yourself be enchanted by my orb, you would have died a painless death." The sorcerer's voice turned harsh, "But now, I will annihilate you." Immediately, the white bones on the floor rose from their limp, scattered state. His voice grew cruel, "Rise, my soldiers." No sooner had he spoken than a skeletal soldier lunged forward aggressively, sword in hand. Kentel thought to himself, "A dungeon with a hidden evil Lick. Ha!" The corners of his mouth curled into a mocking smile. "I've roughly understood what's going on here." The skeleton soldier leaped up, its hollow eyes filled with malice as it prepared to swing its sword. But before it could even strike, and no one even saw when Kentel made his move, he kept a cold expression and smashed his fist directly into its head. The sorcerer jumped in shock. The skeleton soldier immediately collapsed to the side, its skull shattered into 3 pieces and then slowly disintegrated into dust. Kental waved his hand and judged coldly, "You're more shallow than I thought." The lick was momentarily wary and fell silent. But the sorcerer quickly regained his composure and spoke arrogantly, "Let's see if that mouth can still blather after your limbs are severed." He raised his hand, and magic flowed like water, pulling the skeleton soldiers back to life to stand before him. His voice was raspy. "As long as you're still alive, that is all that matters." "Take him down," the sorcerer commanded. Instantly, the entire group of skeletons charged toward Kental. Kental tightened his fists, the force of his grip even causing them to crack. With a cold face, he threw a punch, and the skeleton on the right was instantly sent flying backward. Kental lunged forward again, his left hand smashing into the head of the skeleton on the left. Finally, he threw a kick that left the skeleton in front of him with no time to react. He kept attacking as if he had a homing system locked onto their skulls, hitting them dead on. Every strike was a precise, lethal knockout blow. The sorcerer gasped in horror as he watched the white bones slowly fade away. Kental stood up slowly and calmly said, "It's just as they say, if you lose your head, you die." He rubbed the back of his head, bored, and evaluated the lick. "I thought at least you could command death knights or zombies, but are you really this weak?" The words hit the sorcerer's pride like a critical strike. The sorcerer's voice was heavy. "You bastard, I've had enough of playing games." Kental looked confused. The magic stone on the staff in his hand glowed brilliantly. He rasped, "Awaken!" A source of magical power quickly enveloped the skeletons, transforming them into armored ghost knights. Kental was startled. Those are skeleton knights. The magic had recreated them perfectly. Standing before him was a skeleton soldier clad in full armor, wielding both a shield and a sword. He was slightly surprised. "I didn't expect to meet a skeleton knight here." Kental remembered the previous skeleton knight and became even more expectant. Since it was created by a lick, the structure might be a bit different. This is getting more and more interesting. Suddenly, the sorcerer's hand unleashed more magical energy, which erupted violently. "Kill him." The skeleton knight obeyed the order, lunging forward immediately with immense power. Kental squeezed his fists excitedly and laughed. A knight created by a lick. Before he could even wait, the skeleton knight swung its sword fiercely. Kental said flatly, "I'm curious to see how this one fights." In the blink of an eye, he closed the distance and decisively delivered a blow straight into its gut. A powerful follow-up punch sent the skeleton knight flying all the way to the base of the wall. A deafening boom echoed through the chamber. Dust and smoke filled the air, and if one looked closely, fragments of armor and a shattered shield could be seen flying from the shockwave. As the white smoke began to clear, the dark silhouette of the skeleton knight was still faintly visible in the air. It was tattered, yet still possessed a suicidal will. Kental admitted, "It's tougher than I thought." The sorcerer's eye sockets glowed with a blinding blue light, his voice deep and raspy. "Take this, my ultimate dark magic." Currents of magic wrapped around the skeleton knight, and its power exploded. Just then, another skeleton soldier rushed in with a terrifying appearance. Kental exclaimed, "What is that now?" The skeleton soldier prepared to attack. Kental's hand clenched tightly. He then threw a heavy punch into its face. It was sent flying backward. A loud explosion echoed once more, leaving only smoke and dust behind. Kental observed the situation seriously, while the sorcerer was startled and panicked. After a while, the dust finally settled. Kental stomped hard on a skeletal hand and spoke, "That was unusual. But it doesn't seem that different." At that moment, the sorcerer questioned, "Who are you?" He thought to himself, "I can't sense any mystery or magic from this savage at all. If he were using an artifact, I should at least be able to feel a little mana, but there's nothing." He wondered, is this truly his raw power? Did he defeat a knight using only physical strength? The sorcerer blurted out, "You are truly special." Kental looked toward him, startled. The sorcerer's skeletal hand gripped his weapon. "Very well, I shall face you myself. Consider this an honor." Immediately, a wave of dark power emanated, engulfing the entire space. Kental was panicked. He was now submerged in darkness. 2 eyes glowed brightly within it. "Are you afraid? Yes, be afraid of me, savage. You will pay the price for trespassing into my sacred land." Unexpectedly, Kental replied calmly, "No, I just came here because the orb called to me." "Aren't you the one who distributed that orb?" Hearing this, the sorcerer broke out in a cold sweat, because those who came to this place were indeed drawn by the magic he had dispersed through the orb, and Kental was no exception. He screamed in fury, "Shut your mouth, savage! I am a great and supreme sorcerer. I destroyed the southern kingdom and battled the heroes." Hearing this, Kental remembered the elf queen, Maria Haja Kaja. The name was longer than 2 lines. Was that the trend in this world? The sorcerer continued to unleash his dark power, becoming the stepping stone for Taji's resurrection. That disgusting wave of power was launched straight at Kental. It looked both mystical and powerful, but he just watched it calmly. Kental's eyes swirled, and the magic used to control human emotions surged toward him. It brought forth negative emotions that consumed the victim until their mind shattered. This was the signature magic of dark sorcerers, extremely powerful compared to the amount of mana consumed. An ordinary savage shouldn't even be able to control this power, becoming completely helpless before true magic. The sorcerer calculated continuously, what should I do next? What is different about this savage? He doesn't look like he's carrying any special artifacts. Then the sorcerer snapped his fingers. I will take him with me and study him. Immediately, the skeleton soldiers lying on the ground moved again. Controlled, they approached Kental. Kental quickly changed his footing. The skeletons grew even stronger. Suddenly, Kental's eyes flashed. He unleashed a powerful kick, sending a skeleton flying into the air. Its skull was knocked off as well. Kental remained calm. Meanwhile, the sorcerer was terrified and in disbelief. "No, how can the mind control spell be ineffective?" Kental asked back, "Do you just know how to stand there and watch, then try to capture me with some dry bones? How boring." He showed clear disappointment and even let out a sigh. The words pierced the sorcerer's heart like an arrow. Humans are creatures that act based on emotions, and even powerful supernatural beings have deep-seated negative emotions in their hearts. That is why they cannot escape emotion control magic. However, Kental questioned, "Can't you use magic like fireballs or magic missiles?" The sorcerer replied, "I don't know how you're still standing, but how dare you compare my magic to those low-level spells?" Then his eye sockets brightened. "Aura gather, O murky stream. Regardless of your form, become a wave that swallows the world and causes chaos to the intangible realm." As he spoke, the Lick raised his staff and a mysterious power manifested. Seeing this, Kental wasn't worried. His eyes instead sparkled with light. The strange demonic power flooded the space. Then a skeletal hand reached out, only to be swallowed by the demonic wave. Kental remained standing in place. As the demonic wave swept over his body, it gradually vanished into thin air. The Lick opened his mouth and roared, laughing, "Ha ha, the victory is mine." He was extremely triumphant, but the next second, a mouthful of invisible blood sprayed from his throat. Cough, ha ha, cough, cough. His body collapsed to the ground. The Lick grimaced, thinking to himself, "I overdid it. I used up everything except the mana needed to maintain my body, but with that move, he must certainly be finished." Just then, Kental's voice sounded, startling him. That was impressive. He appeared nonchalantly right before him. Kental asked coldly, "But is that really all you've got?" The Lick was terrified, his expression twisted and distorted as he screamed in his heart, "Even that move didn't work. I used the strongest dark magic among all the mind control spells. Even a great hero would have had their mind torn apart if they had taken that hit directly. What kind of monster are you?" Kental looked down at his own hands and said calmly, "That move was impressive, but I didn't feel any difference at all. If that's your strongest move." As he spoke, he drew his weapon. Kental swung his axe, his gaze cold. "Now it must be my turn." The Lick cried out in panic, "Stop." Kental asked, "What is it?" He continued, "You came here and you already knew who I was." Exactly, everything is clear now. But the more Kental heard, the more confused he became. What is wrong with him? The Lick suddenly opened his mouth and laughed heartily, full of excitement. "Ha ha ha, the Empire, are you that afraid of me? I must admit, your intelligence system is truly formidable to have found me so quickly. But I will return. I will destroy your swords and rule the world once again." HMPH, I once heard that the Empire has a training school for humans that produces countless freaks. That savage must be a product of that place. A sword forged only to destroy me, a killer sent by the Empire. He laughed more and more manically and shouted, "Anyway, I am Keto's Brantum Lessie. I will destroy you savages and overthrow the Empire." Kental stared at the action with a blank face, his head full of question marks. Is he crazy? At this moment, an invisible vessel radiated an intense surge of power. Kental's expression became peculiar. The Lick roared, "Offer your body to me." The stream of power surged directly into Kental. His eyes rolled back, blank and filled with confusion. The Lick calculated internally. I have invaded the savage's body and will swallow his soul whole. If I cannot become a lick again after this, I will be trapped in this body forever. I have no other choice, he he he. The lick was extremely smug, thinking this body now belonged to him. As he shifted into Kentel's consciousness, the lick suddenly felt something wrong. What is this? Is this the internal world of the savage? I have never seen anything like this. Something is wrong, and just standing here is enough to make my mind chaotic and shatter. Could it be the Empire? Immediately after, the image that terrified him appeared. The lick clutched his head and screamed in agony. Arg, no, it's not the Empire. Even the Empire couldn't create this. Kentel now appeared as a giant, completely manipulating him. Everything became chaotic and the lick panicked to the extreme. No, my mind is collapsing. Outside, Kentel scratched his head with a bewildered expression. What just happened? He did something to himself and suddenly collapsed. That black vortex looked quite powerful, but that was all. Isn't a lick supposed to be the highest evolutionary form of a mage? I was even curious to see what kind of magic he would use. Kentel clenched his fist and remarked seriously, turns out the liches in this world aren't scary at all. Anyway, I've cleared the dungeon, now it's time to collect my reward. As he spoke, Kentel bent down to pick up the magic staff. It glowed as he cast a spell. Does this thing help with magic? If I possess it, can I use magic too? He wondered, then suddenly pulled the blue stone off the staff and went blank again. A second later, he laughed happily and put it in his bag. Better to stash it away. Suddenly he realized something. Since it belonged to the lick, could this be a soul container? Kentel looked down at the jar rolling on the floor, picked it up and told himself, I should ask Jossa to take a look. Then he looked around. All right, I think I've gathered enough rewards, but something is off. His eyes suddenly widened. In front of him, a giant circular symbol appeared on the wall. Kentel reached out, wondering, what's this? Could it be a hidden room? His finger pressed on a spot. The hidden door immediately activated. Kentel watched in shock as the wall collapsed. When it completely crumbled, he stepped inside. Inside were many people who had lost consciousness, yet they were still standing firm. There were so many of them. This was the lick's secret sacrificial chamber. Kentel's eyes rounded and he broke into a sweat. It turns out it was real. But he kept walking forward. He observed the people inside, questioning, who are these people? Kentel waved his hand in front of one person and spoke up. Hello. Then he called to another, is anyone there? No one reacted. He rubbed his chin and thought, what should I do now? Finally, he decided to turn back. All right, I'll head back to the territory for now. When I report the situation, they'll surely send someone to handle it. As he walked, Kentel happily calculated. Very quickly, he returned to the territory, and the doorbell rang. Kentel stepped inside, and Rosa, who was working, was astonished to see him. She stood up and greeted him with a smile. Ah, Mr. Kentel, you're back quite early today. Kentel smiled in response, just had a few things to take care of. Rosa asked with a question mark, what kind of things? Kentel smiled mysteriously. Ah, it's about the sphere I showed you yesterday. After hearing that, Rosa sighed. Oh, come on, don't joke around. I'm not joking. She just laughed it off, not believing it in her heart. There are only 5 liches in the entire world. Would one really appear in this remote place? Just then, Kentel placed the jar on the table in front of Rosa. She was startled, her eyes wide. Kentel's eyes lit up. I brought back a jar that looks like a lick soul container. Can you take a look at it? Rosa froze like a statue. With a serious expression, she felt a shock deep inside. He wasn't joking. She gasped, looking at the dark jar. What on earth was going on? Kentel suddenly remembered something and continued. Oh, one more thing, there are still a few people inside. I intended to bring them out, but their minds were completely shattered, so I had to leave them. It's best if the guild sends someone to check. Hearing this, Rosa screamed, excuse me. She fell silent, eyes wide, lost in deep thought. Thinking back, there had been several disappearances in the territory recently, but there was no information on finding them, if the cause was a lick. Just thinking about it, Rosa panicked and slammed the table. Wait, hold on, I'll call someone immediately. Immediately after, the captain appeared, kicking the door open. What on earth happened? A lick, what are you saying? Kentel was oblivious and politely raised his hand in greeting. Oh, hello. He waved his hand dismissively. Everything is settled, nothing to worry about. He stood helpless. Wait, what do you mean? As soon as the story ended, he shouted in horror. Is it Cos Branny Ukes? Kentel nodded. Yeah, I think that's his name. Do you know him? He jumped, panicking as he shouted. Of course I know him. Cos Brandulas Kessi, a mage who dominated the world over a century ago, the founder of mind control magic, causing endless chaos. He made kings lose their minds and invade each other, pushing 5 kingdoms to the brink of extinction. and that person appeared here as a lick. Is this for real? Kental looked as innocent as a deer in headlights as he recounted the story concisely. Right, but he wasn't scary at all. He was just a sneaky guy doing weird tricks and then died on his own. He couldn't believe his ears. What are you talking about? Thousands of questions flooded his head. How could the body of a mage like Kos destroy itself? I want a clearer explanation. Kental rubbed his chin, racking his brain for a logical answer. Even if you ask me that, I have nothing more to add. He began to go numb from the sudden, unexpected events. Not wanting to beat around the bush, he turned away. Wait here for a moment, I'm going to report to the Lord. A few short minutes passed in a daze. What the hell is going on? A lick right near my territory. Lu asked back to be sure. Is it definitely a lick or some other type of monster? Kental truthfully recounted the whole story, quoting the rescued people. It doesn't seem wrong, sir. We even have clear evidence. The ancient jar was placed out and the captain fell silent in thought. Do you mean the soul treasure? A lick of that caliber hiding near the territory without anyone knowing? The Empire might send investigators at any time, and with Lord Ken away, it was a real mess. Without thinking much more, he slammed the table and stood up. Get ready to send a letter reporting everything to the capital. He looked out the window and replied softly, yes. Then he whispered, but perhaps we are still lucky. The captain nodded. Indeed, if the savage hadn't discovered him, I fear we would have been the first victims. In some dark corner, Kos's demonic shadow appeared again. Kos was likely in the stage of preparing to resurrect as a lick, so it's highly possible he concluded, everything is too dangerous. That's exactly right. Lu looked far out the window, letting his mind calculate more. Regardless, this is a significant achievement. We must reward that savage appropriately, as long as it's within the territory's capabilities. Before long, the sky brightened, the first rays of sun shining into the large room as a panicked cry rang out. Lord, Lord. Someone's feet stepped down, putting on slippers. Dressing neatly, I am awake, let them in. The palace door creaked open. The maid rushed in with a look of terror. Lord, the sun god's investigator, Lord Aquas, has arrived in the territory. Lu widened his eyes in surprise. What? In the parlor, a white-haired girl was sitting and waiting. Lu ran over with messy hair. What is the meaning of this? Why is she here? That girl was indeed the sun god's investigator, the most powerful person on the continent. Even the Empire respected the sun god's church. She had authority far beyond a border lord. So why would someone like her be here? Aquas opened the conversation. The territory has been quite turbulent lately. Lu spoke bluntly and firmly. There was a small problem in the dungeon, but it has been handled. In his head, he thought, so she didn't come here because of the lick. Then he probed, may I ask the reason for this visit? She thought for a moment before stating her purpose. I came to discuss a divine vessel. Lu's eyes widened in surprise, however, before going into detail. Aquas wanted to know more about what had happened in this territory recently. Lu hung his head, finding it hard to speak. But eventually, he told her everything. Aqua's face changed. Savage, do you mean this person defeated a lick? Lu admitted it, adding a few more details. That's right, and it might have been Kos Brandy Eula's Kessie. His horrific image appeared. Aquas was fearful, muttering, what, that person is here. To be sure, the ancient jar was placed right before her eyes, Kos's soul vessel. Aquas turned pale. What on earth is going on? She clutched the sun necklace on her neck to calm her anxiety. Everything fell into silence. That savage is still in this territory, isn't he? Lu's reply hit Aquas like a bucket of cold water. He is still in this land. Aquas frowned, anxiously asking again, that savage defeated Kos, is that really possible? Lu confirmed firmly. It is true, he is quite strong, even Lord Can was defeated by him. Aquas realized that the future would see a major change. A new power had arisen. Which tribe does that savage belong to? Lu pursed his lips, his voice low. He said he came from the snowy ice plains. Kental's image appeared in Aqua's mind, full of suspicion. Snowy ice plains? Do you mean he is a savage from that wasteland? How could someone from there appear here? Could it be that he is the reason I was sent here? Lu heard that whisper and paid attention. What? After that, she requested, that savage, can I meet him? At the same time, in a quiet room, Kental held the stone, emitting a dark purple light. Curious, how exactly do you use this thing? It looks like a magic tool for magic. Anyway, I'll ask a mage later. Suddenly he remembered. It's time. Just then, someone outside called. The sun god's investigator requests to see you. The location is the cathedral. He instructed, when you meet her, please show respect. Kental laughed, don't worry, I know. Seeing his normal expression, he was confused, but he moved on. It's good that you understand, let's go. In this world, gods truly exist, bestowing power directly and even manifesting in the world. The places where they are worshipped are called cathedrals. What makes the cathedral here different? Walking for a while they arrived, and he signaled to Kental. We've arrived. This is the sun god's cathedral. He let Kental enter by himself where someone would guide him. Thank you, sir. Kental walked in alone, astonished by the magnificence. The goddess statue was displayed gorgeously. Seats were arranged neatly, and the space was quiet and sacred. The priests walked up to greet him. Welcome, Mr. Kental. Investigator Aquas is waiting. Please follow me. Kental was amazed by the scene. Ah, all right. After a long while, Aquas spoke up. I am very pleased to meet you. I am Aquas, the investigator for the sun god. Kental replied confidently, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am the savage, Kental. Internally, he thought, is this the investigator? She's so young. But she is clearly very powerful. Aquas was startled by that cheeky smile, wondering what it meant. Seeing her silence, Kental spoke up. What is it you wanted to see me about? Aquas lowered her head. It's about the recent dungeon incident. The Twos, the sorcerer you said you defeated, had committed countless crimes across the continent before finally turning into a lick. Only powerful heroes would be capable of facing him. Kental recalled the creature he had just fought. I've heard of him, but the Kas I met was just a struggling, solitary lick. He didn't have enough power and ended up self-destructing. I know it might be hard to believe, but I'm just recounting what I witnessed. Aquas suggested, then would you agree to let my god directly witness this conversation? Kental asked in surprise. Witness it. Aquas explained, that's right, if you lie in his presence the god will react. Kental began to understand, a form of interrogation using divine power. She was extremely guarded while speaking with him. Even though he wasn't a typical savage, he was still a savage, and there was no way he would agree to this. Aquas offered him a choice. Of course, if you feel uncomfortable, you may refuse. Kental's eyes lit up and he excitedly agreed immediately. Why would I refuse such a request? This is the perfect opportunity for me to experience divine power. Kental accepted Aqua's offer. She probed again. Are you sure? He nodded. I'm sure. Go ahead and start. Even Aquas was dissatisfied with his expression. What? Is he actually excited? She asked repeatedly. Doesn't this make you afraid? What do you mean? Kental asked, surprised. She repeated, when a god is watching you. Kental innocently asked, why should I be bothered? I have nothing to hide. I haven't told a single lie in my life. Without further argument, Aquas closed her eyes and began, ah, I see. Then let's begin. Oh, the god I serve, the one who watches from the highest realm, the ruler of the brilliant sun, please use your eyes to expose all lies in this place. The strange, otherworldly gaze revealed itself as it began to glow. A brilliant beam of light shone straight down from the heavens onto the church roof. The light surprised Kental. What is this? I can feel it now. A presence far beyond my imagination, truly magnificent, an existence that cannot be described in human language. He felt confused while facing it. A dim light enveloped the place where they sat. Fortunately, what Aquas feared did not happen. Thank heavens there was no reaction. Then let us begin. From now on, within this pillar of light, no lie shall be permitted to exist. Kental was delighted and agreed. I understand. Aquas and Kental sat across from each other, chatting under the gaze of the sun god. After listening to Kental's account, Aquas watched him intently, thinking, he is explaining the process of conquering the dungeon exactly as he said before. Without a single negative reaction, Aquas continued to ponder, understanding that everything Kental said was the truth. She shifted the subject to another angle. Perhaps the Twos were severely weakened while preparing for the resurrection. If the Kas had still been able to use his magic, this savage wouldn't be here anymore. He is truly lucky. While she was thinking, Kental suddenly asked, have you cleared all your doubts yet? Aquas started, stared at him with wide eyes and quickly nodded. She placed her hand on her chest and said slowly, yes, it is done. Thank you, please forgive my rudeness. Kental replied politely, it's fine, I found it exciting as well. Upon hearing this, Aquas asked cautiously, then, could I finally ask you something private? Kental quickly replied, of course. Aquas hesitated for a moment, and still decided to ask, do you truly come from the ice crystal plains? Kental looked at her, slightly startled, then replied nonchalantly, that's right. Aquas still didn't believe him and asked again, are you really from there? At this moment, Aqua's complexion shifted slightly, and she looked at him with worried eyes, thinking, Could he be the gray savage from the Empire's legends? This time, Kental didn't answer but asked instead, "Then let me ask you a question in return. Why did you come to this land?" The unexpected question made Aqua's stammer. She lowered her head slightly, avoiding his gaze. "I have my own personal business to attend to here." Kental casually continued, "Is that personal business to confirm whether or not I am an unclean being?" Hearing this, Aquas felt uneasy but remained calm and answered, "I don't know what you are talking about." Kental reflected on the fact that he had just faced the divine eye, and resting his chin on his hand, he shared his thoughts. "I'm not sure, but isn't a god personally watching over this a bit much just to detect a lie?" Aquas frowned slightly, closed her eyes, and felt deeply conflicted. "I want to say that's not it, but under the divine eye, all lies are forbidden." Finally, she spoke and admitted, "You're right." Kental exclaimed and asked, "So you were targeting me from the start?" Aquas looked at him and asserted firmly, "That is not the case." She recalled when she had first arrived, kneeling in the church with her hands on her chest, and explained there was a prophecy. "When I arrived here, I thought you might be the person mentioned in it, but as you can see, that was the result." This time, Aquas bowed her head again, placed her hand on her chest, and said sincerely, "I apologize, I hid my true intentions." Kental looked at her and replied nonchalantly, "It's okay, I found it interesting in my own way. Let me ask you one more thing, what did that prophecy say?" She looked up at Kental, stunned, clutching her necklace, hesitating as she thought that normally she shouldn't reveal this to someone she didn't truly trust. But in the end, Aquas still told him. The prophecy made the atmosphere of the conversation more mysterious than ever. No one knew what Aquas had revealed to Kental. Those words left him stunned in surprise. The dialogue soon came to a close, and before long the sky had turned pitch black. Aquas stood before the window, deep in thought. In the quiet space, there was suddenly the sound of rapid footsteps approaching. Aquas heard them and glanced behind her. It was the Lord, who walked toward her with a stern expression. The Lord clasped his hands behind his back and spoke, "You seem to be troubled." Aquas nodded in admission, "That's right, I met with him, but it only made my thoughts more confused." Hearing this, he asked curiously, "Who is he, after all?" Aquas decided to keep the secret, her sharp gaze fixed out the window, her voice firm. "He is undoubtedly a savage from the ice crystal plains." Upon hearing this, the Lord asked in shock, "Is that really true?" Aquas replied, "That's right, we have no news from inside the ice crystal plains, but that is a confirmed fact." The Lord fell silent, thinking to himself, "I had hoped that was just a false rumor, but in the end the truth is undeniable." His voice dropped, "If this spreads, the whole world will be shaken." The Lord thought of the ice crystal plains, and the Emperor worried. If the Emperor takes action personally, just imagine the chaos. As he was pondering, Aquas spoke up, "You don't need to worry about that." The statement made his eyes widen in surprise. Aquas was silent, her heart filled with chaotic thoughts. The relationship between savages and those who serve the gods had never been good. Because of that, the fact that they were growing stronger was not something she could laugh off. The Lord set that matter aside and asked, "By the way, what exactly was written in the prophecy that you had to meet him in private?" She replied slowly, "I needed to confirm one thing." The Lord wondered, "What do you mean by confirm?" Aquas turned to look outside, sharing her thoughts, to see if he is a pure human or just something pretending to be one. The Lord, standing behind her, exclaimed, "Good heavens, what exactly was written in the prophecy?" Aquas answered cautiously, "The prophecy stated that." Her gaze was sharp, her face serious. Those prophetic words could not be taken lightly. After hearing it, the Lord's expression was also surprised. He stammered, "How could that be?" The morning sun shone through the window, a steaming cup of tea resting on the table. The Lord asked Kental, "Are you still doing well?" Kental replied carefree, "Thanks to you, I'm living quite well in the territory." He wondered, "So why did you call me here again?" His voice became solemn, "As the Lord, I have something I want to say." Kental crossed his arms and said easily, "I'm not really bothered." The Lord then said, "It's not an apology, but I have prepared a reward for your merits in saving the territory." Having said that, he brought out an item. Upon seeing that item, Kental's eyes widened. With his surprise clearly visible, the Lord placed a large bag on the table and said seriously, "We are presenting the reward that the Lord has granted." Looking at the tightly tied bag, Kental thought to himself, "A container, a leather bag." He said gently, "It's not an ordinary leather bag, go ahead and check it yourself." Kental's eyes were full of surprise, thinking, "This is an enchanted item in the form of a bag." Seeing him open it, the Lord explained, "You can store any number of items as long as there is empty space inside the bag." Kental looked deep into the bag, seeing an immensely vast space inside, estimated to be the size of an entire room. He pondered, enchanted item, an object created through magic. Kentel stared at the bag thinking, this is the first time I've seen an enchanted item in real life. He said again, even if an item is larger than the bag's opening, you can still fit in as many as you like. Hearing this, Kentel picked up a large axe thinking to himself, in this case, let's try it with an item and see. Looking at the axe, which was too large for the bag, Kentel thought to himself, it doesn't look like it will fit from the outside. But after bringing the axe to the bag's opening, it was automatically sucked inside. He exclaimed in surprise. The Lord continued to instruct him on how to use it. If he wanted to take anything out, he only needed to reach his hand into the bag and visualize the item. Kentel listened and followed suit, and indeed he was able to take it out. His eyes sparkled and he excitedly exclaimed, "That's truly amazing!" Contrary to his excitement, the Lord's voice was calm. "This is a gift I send to you in return for saving the territory. I hope you like it." Kentel quickly replied, "Like it? I love it. I will definitely put it to good use." Hearing this, he smiled and said slowly, "Seeing you happy makes me happy as well." He wasn't happy for long before he worried again. "All right, I think this matter can end here. The rest is just the prophecy." In his heart, he asked himself, what exactly is going on in this distant land? In another world, different species from the demon world were overflowing into the world, and standing before Asisha, his face was stern. It seems something is unfolding in the world. The Lord also broke out in a cold sweat, thinking, perhaps everything is related to this prophecy. He remembered the words Aquas had once said while standing by the window. The prophecy stated that evil would descend, a great evil would fall and spread throughout the world. The Va-Can territory was a network connecting countless villages, so the villages were still in contact with one another. Then one day, contact with one village was suddenly cut off. Initially, no one thought much of it, but as many days passed without any news, a nearby village sent people to investigate. They never returned either. Upon hearing the news, the Lord sent guards, but they didn't come back either. Only then did the Lord realize that something serious was happening. Rosa raised a finger and asked, "What request do we have today?" "There is an urgent request today," someone answered. Kentel crossed his arms and asked, "What's it about?" Rosa answered immediately, "Go and verify the situation in a village that has lost contact." Seeing him still sitting there blankly, she conveyed the information. "A few days ago, a village stopped responding entirely. You just need to go and check the situation. It's a simple starting task, but the pay is very generous." Hearing the words generous pay, Kentel rested his chin on his hand, his face bright. "I like tasks like that, I'll take this one." Seeing his excited expression, Rosa thought to herself, "Just as I expected." Seeing his excited expression, Rosa thought to herself, "Just as I expected." H looked tired, leaning against a tree trunk. She walked forward with heavy steps. Suddenly, a voice sounded. H started, looked toward it, and cried out in panic. Kentel appeared before H and smirked. H observed him from top to bottom and said suspiciously, "Your clothes." Kentel waved his hand and replied, "I just had a new set made. The old one I was wearing was torn to shreds." H stared in awe and praised, "The design looks quite unique." Kentel wasn't shy about showing it off either. "I designed it myself," H replied. "That's truly impressive." Suddenly, H remembered and asked, "Are you taking on this task too?" Kentel crossed his arms and nodded with satisfaction. "That's right, I couldn't miss an interesting task like this." Hearing that confidence, H thought to herself, "Just as I thought, he really is special." Seeing Kentel go alone, H wondered, "But why are you going alone? Aren't your group members coming with you?" Kentel suddenly remembered his two group members, are Alexandro and Cassin, not participating. H analyzed calmly, "They must have received the task details, perhaps they refused to participate." Hearing this, Kentel only replied, "I understand." Having said that, he looked around and saw 3 people in the distance, then fell into deep thought. "Fewer people than I thought." Kentel rested his chin on his hand and thought, "The task is simple, but the pay is high. I thought there would be a lot of people signing up, yet there are fewer than 10 people in total. It really is a dangerous task." He turned to ask H, "But so what? The task itself seems simple enough." H pondered and analyzed. "True, it sounds simple, but the pay is too high. There are rumors that the guards who went never returned. So in the end, this isn't a simple task." Kentel was also hesitant and looked around, saying, "Even so, the number of people participating is too low. I thought there would be at least 10. H hesitated. "Actually," she whispered, "there is another rumor being spread. Kentel's voice became interested. What rumor? Suddenly H smiled awkwardly. It turned out to be because Aquas was walking over. Her complexion was heavy, her gaze dim and unhappy. Seeing this, Kentel thought to himself, Aquas, the heretic inquisitor of the sun god, is also joining this task. H was worried internally as not many mercenaries dared to work with the sun god's heretic inquisitor. H muttered in fear, she isn't planning on splitting my head in two, is she? Kentel heard this and reassured her that won't happen, she is a very good person. H was shocked. Wait, you know that lady? Kentel naturally admitted, of course I do. Having said that, he walked toward Aquas and said, she is my friend. Upon hearing that, H seemed paralyzed, her eyes widening as she screamed in her head, a heretic inquisitor and a savage are friends. Seeing Kentel walking increasingly toward Aquas, H quickly called out after him, Mr. Kentel. Approaching Aquas, Kentel raised his hand to greet her cheerfully, it's a pleasure to see you again. Contrary to his emotions, Aquas replied coldly, I don't recall when we became friends. Hearing this, Kentel burst out laughing and pretended, did you hear that? Then from now on, being friends is fine too. Aquas was also helpless with him, and glanced to the side saying, speaking of which. Aquas asked bluntly, your teammates also serve a different god, right? Seeing Kentel didn't understand, she continued, I mean Lady Koozha. Hearing this, Kentel was stunned and asked, so you're like her? Aquas found it difficult to understand and replied, yes, but wait, did you say she is a priestess serving Kalozha? Kentel asked softly, is there a problem? She was silent for a moment then spoke, no, it's just that as far as I know, Lady Koozha's followers are in a period of ascetic practice. At this point, her voice became heavy, only those of high status can act at this time. Kentel dropped his voice, hesitating, don't tell me that. Aquas then let out a heavy sigh and quickly hid it, nothing at all. I cannot know the details of every sect, so perhaps I was mistaken.